Here we are. We are the Transpositions. Hello, hello, family out there. We are different panel than you might be used to seeing because we have Erica Smith with us tonight, and she brought notes. So we're gonna
She
get
did.
into that. And I'm excited for it. We
I'm a
got a lot of
nerd.
stuff tonight.
Yeah, we do.
uh,
Yeah, we do.
we got good news from
Crazy
Ember, of
stuff.
course, which is always fun. Steph's got a really crazy story to crack open for us. Um,
Yeah, well, it's all about the nuts. We're definitely talking about nutcrackers right now. So what the
Oh,
hell,
I got rid of mine.
This
Damn it.
is well, I so did I, but mind that. So.
I got enough nuts for all three of no, only for two of us. One of you all has to sit on the sidelines.
I'm
You can take
good.
turns.
Get them from the Peanut Man. There you go.
But hello.
So yeah.
I was gonna say, Erica, you want to introduce yourself for anybody who doesn't know who you are, who hasn't watched you on Transports in the last year or anything like that?
Sure. My name's Erica. I've been in the chat before under Doc Erica. I'm a retired Army combat medic. I actually was served as a trans soldier during Trump's first ban. And I have a few degrees. I went to school for medicine and philosophy and ethics and history, and I teach emergency medicine at a few local colleges. Or I used to. Right now, I'm just kind of like chilling and figuring stuff out. And I'm a nerd, and I care way too much about obscure things that most people are like, meh, that's fine. And I have a dog, and I like dogs. And I played lacrosse at Sweetbriar, and field hockey. I was a
Nice.
trans athlete there.
Yeah.
Aha. Another trans athlete. Guess what? Here we go.
You can brag some stuff. You got to brag about what you're going to be doing. I know you've been itching to talk about it. Do it.
Well, I am kind of.
It's
It's almost sailing season, and I am stoked. We've got to go back and win another title, just because we have to do that. It's in the rules. So we're going to just try and go ahead and do that. And we're putting the mast up on the J24 on the 18th, and start racing the following Wednesday. And also the local Etchos fleet wants me to run all of their races for the summer. So I'm ready to go. I'm in my happy place right now.
I'm happy you're in your happy place. That's where I want you to be. Hate when we fall out of our happy places, to be frank about it.
And it's real easy
It
to like
sucks.
let stuff around you. Like, I mean, I've been there, like in a sport you love, and you're like, go on the field and you're like, all right, so I'm fully aware how people think and what I'm here. Do I hold back and disappoint my team but like keep the naysayers happy? Do I go all out? And just like I would with my team, like, what do you do? And it is not an easy like thing to overcome. So the fact that you're like, yeah, getting out there and we're gonna literally give it everything, like, hey, that's a lot of growth. That's a lot of like personal willingness to focus on yourself and others.
Yeah, we can have a long conversation about trans people in sport. There are so many things we could have long conversations about.
I am okay with you all hosting a trans sports panel on this channel.
Ironically, another thesis I wrote about, because sports is bioethics. So
sports is bioethics in a lot of ways. And I don't know if you've looked through a lot of the stuff on our Discord in the reading room is all about that particular topic, because I was on a committee to propose rules for U.S. sailing and world sailing's stuff. Unfortunately, world sailing beat us to it because nobody wanted to get into the issue. And sports governing bodies are very conservative in the small C sense.
Mm-hmm.
They're risk averse. They don't want to bring up sensitive topics or deal with them. So it's path least resistance stuff. But we were working on this back in 2021, 22,
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunately, World Sailing banned trans women from competing in women's events, and it sucks.
It's also so ironic because when women first started competing in the Olympics again in like the 1900s, late 1800s, they were participating in the same like events as they had separate categories, but the same events. And I remember like they were talking about because the medical knowledge at the time was afraid, well, women, their brains are not big enough to handle education. And if they over exercise or stress too much, their reproductive system could have issues, which is ironic because it's on the inside. And after the 400-meter dash they did in the Olympics, you had these women that were, panting and sweating, and the crowd was so upset seeing women in that condition that immediately after that they limited the women's track that year for like I think it was a 50-meter sprint or 100-meter sprint, whatever it was, and they claimed medical reasons, but my old coach used to
misogyny.
My old coach used to study all of that stuff, and it's fascinating how the actions are the same throughout time. It's just the group of people changes who it affects.
Well, the name escapes me at the moment, but in before 1902, I think it was, figure skating was an open category. Anybody could do it. Woman wins silver, gets a silver medal in figure skating. Next Olympiad, women's
the gold
division.
medalist gave
Get her the hell
his
out,
gold medal,
right?
gave her his gold
And
medal too, because he thought she
Correct.
should have won gold. Yeah,
correct.
I know the story.
And even more recently, in Barcelona, a Chinese woman won skeet shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And in the next quad, skeet shooting was a separate sport. She won gold, and they made it a separate. They separated women out of the category.
It's always fascinating how like
it's really crazy.
Sports have these categories, and they're like, well, it's to separate because men are stronger, blah blah blah. But like, I'm a family of firefighters. My older sister was the first female firefighter in our hometown. My dad's a firefighter. My mom is, and there's no separate category for female firefighters because fire doesn't care who you are. You have to go in and do the job, and if you can't do the job, then you can't. But like same thing. I mean, in the military, like even though there were separate physical fitness standards, like I had like female medics out with the combat arms guys, and they were expected to keep up, and they did. And if you didn't, just like if you were a guy and you couldn't keep up, you weren't allowed to be there. But we educate our youth, and we reinforce this idea that, well, don't try too hard because you don't want to hurt yourself. And if you're good at something, just like and then they call us like, I'm a millennial. They're like, well, you guys just want trophies. And I was like, who were the ones that were giving us the trophies to begin with? As a kid, I didn't give a crap about trophy. I just liked running as fast as I could, and then they decided to do trophies. And then they're like, well, participation to appease a parent that felt insecure that their child wasn't the best.
Kids just want to play with their friends. Mm-hmm. That's all they want to do. They just want to play with their friends.
Trans people just want to exist.
And trans people just want to exist.
Speaking of
women, anyway.
Women in sports over
Carly.
Here.
Well, you want to say, hey, Carly, how's your audio? Oh, we can't hear you. We can't hear you, babe.
You should be able to now.
There. We can hear you now, sweetie. There you are. Good evening.
One of these things works.
That's good.
Well, hey, good to have Erica Smith here.
Mm-hmm.
Back with with us. Give them the facts.
And Erica's not replacing Ember though. Ember will
No,
be back.
I could never do that.
No one can replace Ember.
I believe we should expand the staff and bring Erica on board.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely something we could talk about. Erica's
I
got
would
a
like
lot of great stuff to bring to the table tonight.
I would like that. Plus,
Yeah.
a curly red would really help our Q score.
I agree. I agree.
No, but tonight in Transposition Sports, first we're going to talk about the biggest waste of time in American history, the U.S. congressional hearing.
I don't know. There's a lot competing for that right now in
Yeah,
U.S.
truly.
history.
No, this was a massive waste of everyone's time. It was ridiculous how much time got wasted. For how much taxpayer money did that cost to try and make Marjorie Taylor Greene look like she's actually kind of a leader almost?
About
She
3
was the
federal
chair-
workers worth.
She was
I could.
the chair.
Wow.
She is the chair of the House Subcommittee of the Department of Governmental Efficiency, which means that this is a monument to inefficiency, waste, and objects. I wonder, you know what they really need? They really need a congressional study into how many people are eating lead paint chips in her congressional district, because it's the only explanation you can have for how she gets elected.
Well,
They put
bring
her in
that up
charge
with
of a
Bobby
meme.
Kennedy. I'm not really sure that's gonna fly. But
They put her in
Yeah,
charge of a meme, like how, and she thinks it's such a good thing. And like my generation and younger, we're like, Doge was a meme, like it was a joke to make fun of things, and that's the only reason Elon does it, because he thinks he's cool. And like,
Unfortunately, Elon, you're not cool.
No,
the
you'll never
gamers
be
have
cool,
spoken.
Elon.
He tried playing Path of Exile and was just rocked by the gamers. They were like, no.
Diablo. He played
what was
Diablo
cool?
4, I
What-
think it was, and got his ass kicked too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm
He had
gonna
people
tell you
play
what
for
is-
him. Yeah.
I'm going to tell you something that is cool. This
Yeah.
is cool.
Reading.
Athlete is a gender coming out on March 13th, and tonight on Transposition Sports, Catherine Locke and Nicole Mellenby, who are the chief editors of this, come on here and we talk to them about how they got here. This has been a labor of love for about 4 years, and they did some great stuff. In addition to, we've got highlights tonight. Nikki Hiltz, they did the darn thing at Grand Slam Track Miami. And can we give a little love to Tiffany Abreu? Tiffany did it. Tiffany is now campeã. Osasco won the Brazilian Superliga last week after being tied at the series, tied 1-1. They won the next two. Including a dominating performance on Friday night. And I'll tell you, 8 years ago, people were booing Tiffany because there's this trans woman playing in the Brazilian Superliga. She's now a face of product lines in Brazil, and she's a fan favorite. And now she's a champion. Come in Transposition Sports.
All right. Now I wanted
Cool.
to see if you guys wanted to play a game real quick. This should just be a quick game, and then
Let's do
hand
it.
Thanks over to Erica. But do y'all want to play a game that's called Trump or Trans? Because Josh,
I heard about this.
Ends meet. So, Miss Gosgraves, I want to play a game. It's called Trump or Trans. You ready?
Okay.
So I'm gonna ask you a question, and I want you to tell me whether or not it is Trump or trans people that are responsible. You understand?
Got it.
Okay,
Y'all
very
understand
good.
the rules?
The first one: good at medical research.
Trump.
Kidnapping Americans and sending them to foreign countries, aka deporting them.
Trump.
Driving us into a recession.
Trump.
Increasing the cost of everything.
Trump.
Waging an idiotic tariff war.
Trump.
Harming farmers.
Trump.
Ignoring the Constitution.
Trump.
Proposing to take away Social Security.
Trump.
Cutting health care.
Trump.
Firing government workers who keep our country safe.
Trump.
encouraging an environment of hate and divisiveness.
Trump.
Thank you so much. This committee could be engaged in actual oversight of fraud, waste, abuse, and mismanagement. So let's talk about waste. Like Trump's plan to spend almost $100 million for his little birthday parade, or how he spent 25% of his first 100 days golfing, costing.
Yeah. Anyway, Trump or trans, I love it. Because it really puts things into perspective on what's really important with these folks, you know? Like, why are we having this conversation on about trans people constantly every freaking day in the House? I mean, it should not. Why is the president speaking to the media about trans people every single day now? It's bizarre. It is bizarre. You know, Ronald Reagan was the anti-gay president or whatever, but he didn't go on TV and rage about gay people constantly like Trump does. He knew how to finesse the situation. Trump has no finesse.
The terrifying thing is that the goal is to keep the eye off of Trump by keeping the eye on the horror that is trans.
Oh no, we're
That's
so scary.
yeah.
Aren't you
It's you know, it's demonizing. That's what's going on. You know, oh, don't you may be afraid of what I'm doing, but look at those. What the hell is that? You know, and it's appealing to really base motives, like lizard brain shit.
Well, and it's
know,
easy. Like psychologically, it's easy to if I want to justify something I'm doing and I can't explain it, or I don't have a good reason, or maybe I don't even understand why I did it, the first thing I'm most likely as a human being, not Erica, but as a human being going to do is find something external to blame, because it's a protective mechanism. So that way we don't feel any negativity towards ourselves. So like, you know, it's why anything that is, if something makes you feel scared or fearful or like angry, like that's when you have to take a step back and be like, okay, is there a reason why they would want to make me do this or feel this way? Oh God, my camera's freaking out. But like, you know, so then you have to ask, okay, what would be those reasons? And exactly what you said, Stephanie, of like, it's a distraction, and it's an easy distraction to keep people not questioning things.
Hey, yeah, let's segue into Erica having the floor here, though. You
Sorry.
Do your... No, I'm here. I'm ready for it. It's time. We need to pass the baton over to you.
Okay, well, so I was asked to come on here to talk about like the Health and Human Services report that was released last week for an ethical review of gender affirming care is kind of what it's sitting behind. And as somebody who I have my bachelor's in philosophy, focused in bioethics, and I have a graduate bioethics degree or a certificate, and my thesis was on the ethical analysis of treating trans and adolescent children with gender dysphoria. And I did that in 2018, before this was a huge thing, to the point where I remember talking with my advisor, and we were kind of saying, we probably can't find many sources. It's really not that. And even to a point where it was like, hey, this isn't even really a hot topic. Like, I remember a conversation you told me, was like, I think you'd have a hard time finding people that would think that it's unethical. And camera, stop it. It's bugging me. But let's see if this works. Now fix? Yay. No. Okay. Anyway, so what I do and what I did was I looked at this report from an ethical analysis, because it's claiming to be one. It is 400 pages originally of this report, and an additional, like, I think 300-ish in the appendices. And And I sat there for hours straight just reading it and going through, making notes in my head, writing down notes, because, you know, it's not about what the title is, it's about what they hide inside of it. Because once a document becomes important, then courts can cite it as valid. So I sat there and I said, okay, what is this saying? It's saying a lot, but not a lot at the same time. What's important to understand about ethics, bioethics, and philosophy, and why you can't just come in, just like any field, why you can't just come in and assume that, you know, it's the same, is that there's a certain way to approach conversations, and there's a certain way to approach discussions, and there's a certain way to analyze things as well as yourself. Going to the first point of biases. This camera's going to upset me. Biases. So biases are really important. And I know that like certain people in this administration, they say that that's a bad thing, like privilege. But a bias, every human being has a bias. Let's get that straight out of the gate. Because a bias is just the lens that we see the world through. And based on the situation, it could be beneficial or harmful to us or to others. And what philosophy and ethics tries to do is we try to identify the biases in ourselves and in the authors and in these papers and in the culture. And we try to like separate that from the data being shared and say, is this data accurate? Is this data, is the conclusion accurate? Did they come to a proper conclusion? Everything like that. The other important thing that I'm going to kind of do like a little warning on right now is the consistency and the importance to define terms. And so I may use terms that people may say or feel are like out of date or not, or harmful. Understand that I'm not trying to use it in a way to marginalize anybody, in a way to insult anybody or anything like that. The reason to use that I try to use some of the consistent terms I do is because it is the standardized terms in the medical field that is used. So like you want to use the terms that if they diagnose gender dysphoria and how the diagnosis is in the DSM-5, we want to use similar terms to that because otherwise we can miscommunicate. And that goes into the first issue I have with this paper that they wrote, is that they claimed it was important to use consistency. And so they like understand the concept of consistency, defining terms, using consistent terms, having proper definitions, if you can make them. And then they go and say, okay, well, we're not going to use any of these terms that we don't like, including gender. Their claim is that gender can't be used in this sense because it's medical, and gender isn't real because it's a social construct. Whereas sexuality and sex is real because it's a physical construct. I'm going to use as an example. Money is not real. It is a concept. Yet people die and kill each other and survive and thrive off of money. It is a concept. That doesn't, just because it's a concept doesn't mean it's not real and impactful. So they decided not to use the term gender. And that throws a nail in the confusion because a lot of the terms with gender dysphoria has to do with gender. And so they make up their own terms. And the terms they make up are silly, to say the least. But like, you know what? If a philosopher wants to make up their own terms to define something, as long as they're consistent, oh, come on, camera, stop being dumb. As long as they're consistent, that's fine. Whatever, you know? So the issue, though, is that throughout their paper, they constantly bring up the argument about how terms are being used colloquially or like through common language, and it's confusing, and that's why like some of these kids or adolescents or people are confused or supportive, and how like it's really important to have these defined terms and to stay consistent. But throughout the entire document, they were not even consistent with their own rules and definitions that they made in the beginning. And the definitions that they made for things including sex or like sexual identity, which they didn't. They tried to use at one point but couldn't. And they used the term PMT, which is prepubescent medical transition, which is not a real thing. I mean, it's something that they made up to define this, but it's meant to describe treating people under the age of 18 with medical treatments for transitioning. Now, I'm going to define that that medical treatment involves mental health and physical health. So you have stuff like hormones, puberty blockers, therapy, extreme cases, surgery, but also you have stuff like psychotherapy. You have mental health medications. You have psychiatry, psychology, counselors, therapists, anything, because the body and the brain are not separate; they're together. Which is an argument I made of why gender is just as important as sex, because sex is the physical of who you are. Gender is the concept of who you are, and both of those things make you. Without each other, you don't exist. Example, you die. Your body's still here. Everything else, but like who you are is gone. You're not living. But if your body was still there, by the definition that your body is who you are, then, your spirit leaving, or however you believe, or whatever you believe, that leaving wouldn't change anything about your body. So that was one of the big issues that they had in this paper. The second one was they had a consistency to use proper terms, terminology, processes, and explaining that they're using them, like evidence-based medicine, systematic reviews, like different grade scales. Grade using it's a form when you do research. Grade is how you grade papers for biases and stuff like that. And throughout this paper, they were saying, well, we use these things, but they don't, because ended up reading the document of the research process they used, and they didn't follow any of those procedures. If in fact they broke many of the main points that the process is supposed to have, but also they incorporated research and papers, a systematic review. What they did basically is they took a bunch of they searched a bunch of areas for research papers and documents. They narrowed it down to a handful of papers to have research related to gender, gender dysphoria, treatment of it, efficacy, stuff like that, and tried to use that as their argument of why it's unethical. However, the ones that they used and the criteria that they used to exclude things forced it like benefited their preconceived notion, which is what happened with this paper. This paper came out and said, this is our conclusion, and we are going to prove this conclusion that we have. And the problem is you normally get that conclusion when you're done with everything, not in the beginning. But it's very evident that they did this in the beginning. So, like, for example, they cite the CAS review significantly. And the CAS review has, I don't need to go into details, but the CAS review has a lot of issues throughout the world. They also claimed that anything from WPATH, which is the World Professional Health Organization for trans people, the American Endocrine Society, American Medical Association, basically they took any organization that had any policy that was for trans medicine, and they said these are too biased, and we're not going to use any research or papers done by them. And I also want to remind you that HHS gutted about 3,000 papers related to trans health and research before they released this review. And a review should take about a year minimum to do. And this was commissioned end of January. So they, self-fulfilling prophecy. And throughout all of this, when you get to the ethical side, like they use the right terms: anatomy, beneficence, non-maleficence. Anatomy is consent, your right to consent, and your right not to consent. Beneficence is the good that something does for you or for people, others. Non-maleficence is the intent of trying not to do harm. So you don't want to intend to do harm, even if it's good for somebody. And then they tried to use justice, but justice was a 1-paragraph statement, and they didn't, and throughout the entire paper, they didn't even address the fact that trans people are marginalized populations. They never addressed, even in the history, they were like, oh, the first time transsexualism was used is in the 1950s. They conveniently left out a 1930 to 1950 period of history in Germany, which had a certain institute that had the world's leading research on trans people and trans medicine that was burned by the Nazis. And they left that out completely. And as a medical ethicist, I can tell you that if you can't even get that right in your history, how can you trust that they're going to get it right in anything else, like the treatments? Most of the treatments that they talked about, they only focused on it relating to people for gender dysphoria, saying it hasn't been used and we don't know that much. But the reality is, in medicine, we do know a lot. Why? Because guess what? HRT didn't originate with trans people. HRT originated with postmenopausal women that are born with ovaries and uterus. HRT, hormone replacement therapy, like literally my mom takes estrogen because she's on HRT for postmenopause. The puberty blockers, we've used them since their inception to help children who started puberty too early and they died. Like, so we know what all this stuff does to people because we've done it. And so, and we've had the longitudinal research, but they didn't take any of that into account because all they were focusing on was, oh, well, it has to relate to children. And they didn't even include any trans adults in any sort of research, including those papers that had longitudinal studies that had children and then adults and the benefits. And their argument was, well, we don't want to focus on adults, we want to focus on children. But their whole premise is that we don't have enough research. More research needs to be done. And because more research needs to be done, we should not be doing this, and it's unethical. They are, again, there's another notion of them fulfilling their desire for a conclusion, and not normally in a philosophy paper, you want to challenge your position. The more you challenge your position, if they're called counter arguments, the more solidified you could be. So I even wrote counter arguments down when I was discussing this, like, what would cause me to not properly come to a conclusion with this? Counterclaim 1, I'm too biased because it affects me. And obviously, like, this is my field. And I have a large knowledge about this. And I have a political reason not to like, the person in charge of HHS. However, to counteract that, then if that's the standard, then no expert should ever be discussing. And I'm not sitting here claiming I'm an expert, but like, I like to think I know a little bit and have some experience and knowledge. And so if that's the case, then every expert is too biased. So is it possible I'm biased and not thinking properly? Yes. However, I have nothing to gain from doing that, because who the hell is going to listen to me? Counterclaim 2, they do bring up a lot of concerns around the difficulty of treating children and adolescents with gender dysphoria in medicine. But what is concerning that they do is that, so they bring up a lot of concerns, even if it is concerning how they draw their conclusion. But like, some of the concerns that are real is like the aspect of, hey, we don't want to rush anybody, which is true. I've never met a trans person that's like, I want to rush. I hope I'm overlooked and rush into this and genuinely mean it. Sometimes you want more results, but that's not rushing into a decision. Additionally, we don't want to, just like anywhere in medicine, when I practice medicine, like, I don't want to, why would I want to hurt my patients ever? And that's where medicine disagrees. But like, I don't want anybody to be hurt. I don't want there to be a mistake. Additionally, I also know what the stakes are, and I understand in the sense of the politics and the culture view. And so I want there to be proper safeguards to show people that it's safe. Just like with vaccines, we show people that this stuff is safe. And so even with that counterclaim, they do have a point. They have a point that, yes, there are concerns and we should do more research. You're right. We should do animal testing. They are right. We should have more experts in this field. They're right. But to come to my conclusion that I came with all of this is that this paper is unethical and this analysis is unethical because their whole premise, their organization themselves has worked against their own conclusions. They have cut funding to any research dealing with trans people. They have cut animal testing. They literally talked a page about why haven't we done animal testing? And they had just cut a study for animal testing to see the effects of testosterone on lab mice. And additionally is that
they were transing the mice, I mean,
yeah, of course, they
so,
weren't seeing the effect of, how it would. Also, by the way, if anybody don't know, in medicine and biology, we use mice because mice, their DNA matches us very similarly. Same thing why we use fruit flies, but their lifespans are so much shorter.
Into a mouse. You can take a human gene and put it into a mouse, so you can see how
Correct.
different medications react on someone with that genotype.
Yeah, or they'll react. Like, for example, when you take your dog to the vet, they're giving them human medication. Like, there's not the animal medication. It's all human-based medication. It's just the dosing is by weight. So dogs are smaller. So it's like mammals are all very similar to each other. But yeah, so this paper is unethical because they don't take into account autonomy. Their interpretation of beneficence is that we don't know enough, so it means that there is no benefit, which is not the case, and they disregard any sort of actual benefit out there. The non-maleficence, they never address harm they never address the harm of withholding care, or how they play a bias, or how politics have caused issues with stuff like regret in transitioning. I had some regret a few years ago where I was like, you know what? Maybe I might transition because life freaking sucks. And when I was seen as a male in society, at least like people took me seriously. I could get a job. I didn't have to fight for pay. I felt safer. I didn't have to be scared to go to the doctor or to go to the bank because someone might see my legal name. So yeah, I thought about detransitioning then, but I know I have therapy. So going to therapy, that's why we go. And their final claim is that
so many things to unpack here.
It's just, and the final
shit.
thing is they say, well, we should be doing psychotherapy for the children. Here's the thing. When this paper came out, I was in therapy with my therapist, who's an expert in this field. And I joked with her and said, hey, we should have been in therapy. Did you know that for trans health? And she was like, Erica, it's like we started 7 years ago or something. Like, therapy is the first line thing that, especially children, you should do because it's support. It's non-judgmental. It helps them. But the paper wants their version of therapy.
And they talk therapy.
Yeah, they talk about
which is conversion therapy.
They talk about it's not conversion therapy. It is.
Of course it is.
It's
precisely the way I was raised. As I'm older than dirt, at least older than everybody on the panel. But growing up as a trans kid, a self-aware trans kid in the 1950s, it was conversion therapy. No, you're not. That's impossible. I wrote a little thing about the impossible girl. I mean,
it's
if you really difficult to be told over and over and over again that you're impossible. Who you are as a person is an impossibility, and it's not.
If you ever want to know if something
would
like
have
that,
been easy, it would have been easy to say, "Oh, interesting. Let's think about that." And follow that line of discourse rather than saying, "No, you're not. That's impossible. When it's absolutely clear that it's not only possible, it's ethical.
In medicine,
Uh,
if you
it-
claim
and-
something is impossible, that means that you have now closed off a potential benefit. And I'm not referring to like, oh, well, is it impossible that vaccines cause autism? No, because that's why we look at the data. The data will say if it's impossible or not.
That's right.
But if you just say
That's right.
it's impossible, then there's no ethicalness about that. It's entirely just based on a preconceived notion and belief. You're right.
Erica, I don't know if you've looked on our Discord. The very first paper that we've listed in papers and articles on our Discord, the very first one is one published by the New England Journal of Medicine, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, volume 324, number 22, in 1991. It's called "Of Mice and Men: Problems of the Randomized Clinical Trial."
Mm-hmm.
And everybody in this chat, everybody watching this should read that, because medicine is not physics. Medicine is not chemistry. Medicine is dealing with human lives. And when it is shown that effective treatment can be given, that the preponderance of positive results come from this treatment, it is absolutely unethical to foreclose that line of treatment. Absolutely unethical. It's not even reasonable. And the argument made in this particular article explains in great detail why that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I found this paper when, you know, Sabine Hassenfelder decided to go down the we don't really want to, you know, there's the kids are being transed and all of this stuff, and it's like, and you know, and the Cass review does the same thing. It's like they throw out all of these trials that say yes, uh, 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 this therapy has a benefit, gender affirming care has a benefit. They throw out all of these things on the basis of the fact that there's not a randomized clinical trial.
Do you know the ethics of a review board trying to get a randomized clinical trial for children, let alone like the arguments against a lot that this made was like, well, there's not enough patients in these studies. There's not enough, like, and it's like, okay, like 0.6% of the population on average ends up becoming trans. You have about 2.some% that is gender questioning. So you're saying that there's a lack of evidence because you can't have a lot of people? Crazy. Like but it fulfills, you know, their own, like I said, it's why.
And there are these citations that there are citation after citation that, well, you know, kids grow out of it. And you know, it's like 80% of the people that enter a gender clinic, you know, decide, well, you know, this ain't for me.
Around 80% of people grow out of allergies through their life. Like, but does that mean they don't carry an EpiPen?
Correct. That wasn't where I was going with this. The thing where I was going with this was that's actually a demonstration that the procedures in therapy are in fact benefiting the 20% that don't, and it's actually more. You know, it's actually more than 80%. I don't remember the figures off the top of my head at the moment. But you go into a gender clinic and they'll figure it out. This is not something that is a very common thing, which I think a lot of people don't seem
They
to
don't
appreciate.
understand.
The therapy first, the therapy first thing is already, it's like Erica said, it's already happening. So that's a big nothing burger to make people feel like they're doing something, like this is the right medical path. It's the medical path that's already taken. That's why it's 80%, because a lot of people can talk through these things without getting any kind of clinical intervention, or clinical, any kind of pharmaceutical intervention or surgical intervention or anything like that. Can talk through this stuff with a therapist, and if they're not trans, they will work it out. Right?
Mhm.
That's it's always been the practice, even for adults. Like even myself, I went to
Absolutely.
years of therapy before I decided to come out. Right? I came out to myself in segments through therapy.
Yeah.
I wish I'd had access to do that when I was younger, but
Whenever I have so many people that would ask me when I was more into the advocacy scene of this, of like, wow, like Erica, you've had such a good transition, blah, 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 blah. What do I do and everything? And I was like, do you have a therapist? And they're like, well, no, there's nothing wrong with me. I was like, that's not what I asked. I said, do you have a therapist? If you don't, you should go to one. And it's not because there's something wrong with you. I go to the doctor once a year for a checkup. Doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It's you go to work with an expert that can help you come to a common conclusion that is beneficial to your goals and needs, but is in a non-biased way. I mean, my therapist her and I would chit chat sometimes, and she would talk about past issues where, like, she was like, yeah, this person came in and I could tell that, they're like, I'm 100% trans. She's like, and I never told them no. She's like, I don't think so, but we explored it. And then eventually they came out that, like, oh, maybe I'm this. She's like, but I'm not sitting here telling you yes or no. I'm sitting here letting you figure it out. And that's what psychotherapy should be, instead of what HSS wants.
Correct.
It's like a best
I
friend.
mean, it's yeah, and it's what's more ethical. I know what's best for you, or I'm going to help you discover what's best for you.
And that's the first part of autonomy. Respecting consent and autonomy of a person and or animal. Only because personhood view is a different thing, and that's where you go down the rabbit hole. I could talk for hours.
That's where you do go down the rabbit hole, because that's where ideology lies. It's like it is a particular point of view that father knows best, right? That kind of thing. It's like we know better than you do about how your life should be, and if you're not following our directions, obviously you're off the beaten path. So here you go, just follow our directions, and if you don't follow our directions, we're going to do things.
The other issue that I kind of want to ask you guys about that you thought was HHS. So I don't know if anybody in the chat or here were aware, but this study had no authors attached to it. And they originally claimed that it was to protect them. But I'm going to tell you, I've worked in research a lot, especially in sciences and philosophy. I've never met a single researcher or scientist that has done work that is like, oh yeah, I want to publish this, but I don't want to put my name on it, unless there is a reason for it. And the reason is because when I was reading this, it stunk. I put it through a ChatGPT thing that I use for my students at school. And it came up that 87% of it was most likely written by ChatGPT, which that could be a misnomer, but also it reminds me a lot of conservative philosophy stuff I've read out of his Heritage Foundation.
Right. And to your point, Florence Ashley, when this study was first released, like a little over a week ago, pointed out that the lead author in the thing, or the guy that was sort of
he was in the press release, yeah,
was a philosopher at Harvard with absolutely no expertise in this field.
Yeah, and
there's a doctor, well, Jordan Peterson said,
There's a doctor that was attached to this press release as well that he was like, this is some great medicine, blah blah blah. And again, Google's an amazing tool. The same doctor was involved in a massive scandal that made him lose his license in California during COVID because
What a shocker.
he conducted an unethical COVID test on children and had his wife recruit all of the children at his child's middle school by talking to the parents and encouraging them. And the study ended up becoming like, you know, it came out and everybody was like, this study makes no sense. And also look at the unethical practices you did, because again, to do any studies on children is very much well regulated for a reason. And like this, if this guy's willing to do that, then, you know, and support stuff like that, then I'm not saying people can't change. However, because we always have to leave space for, you can't be 100% on anything. But I could be fairly sure all signs pointing is that when you do a research study, you need to have experts, and you also need to include the stakeholders, they're called. Not the stakeholders that are like, you know, donors, but the people that this would impact. So if it's a study on cardiac arrest patients, include cardiac arrest patients. Like in the study development, and they did not do that here. And like, I'm okay if there's a philosopher that was, and sure, maybe it's not their field, but did they have a medical doctor that has ever worked with trans people or worked at a gender clinic? No, because again, the language used in this was very much like language that I had to look up words because I'm like, I've never seen this before. It's because it's language typically used in law and philosophy and law is very different.
But they did cite Ken Blanchard and Zucker and all of these people who
Bailey,
are and J. Michael Bailey, of all people, who's an author, who were the bane of my existence back, you know, back 26, 27, 30 years ago, coming up with these cockamamie theories about gender and trans people and stuff, and it's
you
like
ever heard of
way
Dr.
outside the
Ray
mainstream.
Blanchard from the 80s?
Yeah, that's one of them.
That's
autogynephilia.
Autogynephilia.
That was the basis
that's the
of
guy I
my
was
original,
referring to.
My original thesis was based on his research, and his research was so flawed because he created the definition of autogynephilia and he cited his own paper to do it. And that's not how, that's like saying this is a hammer because I'm telling you it's a hammer. That's what
correct.
I'm, you know, that's the equivalency.
There's another study.
Hold on, Steph. Just give me a second. Sorry. He still does the rounds doing interviews with detransitioners.
He's also one of the authors of the DSM-5 and DSM-4. He's on the board. Which,
correct.
That's the only reason autogynephilia is still a diagnosis is because he's one of the authors.
It's not a diagnosis. It has no
it's
diagnosis code.
Technically, in DSM-5, it exists as a subcode. Like, it's not like a full code anymore. It's like a differential subcode, but like it's not like, because he's still on that committee and does that. But trauma is not in the DSM-5. Post-traumatic stress, but
I used to have to. Yeah, I used to. Do the DSM-5 reviews for their to make sure things were DSM-5 compliant, and I've never seen a diagnosis for autogynephilia. I've seen diagnosis for vampirism.
There's not a code for it
for AGP.
It's because it's called. Sorry, I just wanted to double check that I was remembering this right. It's called transvestic disorder. They renamed it.
Well, yeah,
they renamed it in the DSM-5-TR. To transvestic disorder, sexual arousal from cross-dressing.
Right, but that's to me that's a different thing to being transgender though, or being.
Oh yeah, no, it's not at all the same as transgenderism, and also like I've known several. I was doing a master's in mental health counseling, and I've known several counselors, psychologists, and people like that have like in my 40-year career I've worked with like gender exploring and trans people and sexual disorders. I've met one person that could fall under like autogynephilia or transvestic disorder. And that's what they were saying. They were like, it is so rare that like, I think it's a solution looking for a problem. instead of a problem looking for a solution, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
it's
well, there's
horrible.
another study that is also up in our little papers and articles thing in the Discord, that's a study that was taking the principles of autogynephilia and actually did a study of cisgender women, uh, basically asking, well, when it comes to sex, when it comes to you're fantasizing, do you fantasize about having sex as a woman? And like 80% said, "Oh fuck yeah!" So
Yeah.
it's just a ridiculous
They-
fucking theory.
they also use
it's
this
beyond
test.
it's beyond stupid.
They use this test that's been outlawed in every country except, like, I think Croatia and Czechoslovakia, and it's a test to
Oh.
determine if someone's a pedophile. And basically, like, they put somebody's, like, genitalia into a device and they show them sexualized pictures of children and sees what happens.
Well, they did that at Brigham Young University.
Well, yeah, and then
actually.
it became outlawed. But this was done in, like, the
Yeah.
90s and 2000s by Ray Blanchard did this. And it's been
he
outlawed for
Yeah.
50 years.
The paper that he'd put around their genitals and stuff.
Mhm. And then everyone's arguing, like ethicists are arguing, hey, you're showing these sexualized pictures of children. How did you get those pictures? Is that not pedophilia?
That is a problem.
And that's what I mean. Like, that's what we ask questions in medical ethics of, like, not only what is the data saying, but how did you get it? What steps did you do this? Why do you think there's Nazi medicine isn't considered accurate? They did a shit ton of research, but because they talked about and followed eugenics, but talked about how Jewish people are less superior than the Aryan race or whatever, then their studies were designed biasly because they relied on this presumption that because they used Jewish prisoners in concentration camps to study these things, and they relied on the presumption that Jewish people were weaker and inefficient, and all these things, and which is flawed because people are people, and that's a big issue in bioethics. That's why we don't use Nazi research, because people are like, well, they still did the study, we should use it. It's like, no, because it's not good research. That's like saying, oh, do I need to wear a sweatshirt today? And, like, you're standing in front of your air conditioning unit. That's not helpful. It's not.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on and chatting with us tonight, Erica. As
Sorry I
said,
talked
you're
so much.
No, you're good. This
No
is what we
worries.
want when we have
It's been great.
Yeah, we appreciate you, and you spent the hour with us. We had a great chat. This is usually where we jump into the segment of good news. With Ember, which I really appreciate you being here. I do want to have you back, definitely. Let's talk about making some return appearances on here, because I appreciate your brain. Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one.
We didn't even get to talk about the trans soldier ban this week,
No.
Oh, I think that might come up here and there.
Yeah, we'll
not,
if we don't cover it good enough, we'll pick up more on it next week. But yeah, we did have to cut out some stuff for this conversation that I had with Marcy, which is not something normally. So normally we'd have a little more time to talk, but I had
no, I'm sorry. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I
No,
had this
no worries.
interview, and it is coming up later with Marcy Reitgen, the girl that was arrested in Florida for washing her hands in the state capitol bathroom, in the women's bathroom. I did an interview with her. It's not super long, about 40 minutes or so, but that'll be later in the show. So stick around if you wanted to see that. Erica, what do you have coming up though?
Oh, I next week, or no, tomorrow night myself and our Sweetbriar group, because Sweetbriar all women's college I went to that banned trans women. I'm part of a group that we are activists trying to full of alums. Sweetbriar, they had an author that was supposed to come and share a book. This author found out that the author of Mobility, Lydia Kiesling, she found out that they banned trans people, and the administration was being very abusive and authoritarian, and returned her check and said, I'm not going to be showing up to the school to do this presentation. And she was like the headliner presentation that the school does traditionally every year. And she said no. And I reached out and said, hey, can we host you so people can still learn about your book?
Awesome.
And she's now worked with us. So tomorrow night, I'll have links. You guys can join us if you want and learn about Lydia and her book Mobility. Other than that, I'm going to be sleeping. That's all I do. I do YouTube, but it's not entertaining.
Yeah, I do. I sleep most of my life away, so I get it. All right. Well, Steph, anything you want to add in before we jump into some good news?
Well, I think that that you mentioned what's coming up for your thing, but I think it's really fun that this article in them says a couple of women in Massachusetts were hustled out of a hotel restroom because somebody decided that they were trans.
Mhm.
And it's like, what on earth? Two cis women kicked out of a Boston hotel bathroom after one was ordered to
It's
prove
kind of like this
sex.
is what we've been saying for years now. Of this is what's going to happen. And also the trans guys, all my trans guys friends that no one ever knows trans guys are trans because they all look jacked. Like they all have beards and are jacked. And it's like now, like in the UK, they're forcing them into like, well, you now have to use a women's restroom. And they're like, literally, this is the problem you talked about. How do we know that a cis guy isn't coming in just saying they're trans? Because now they don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
This is exactly what we've been banging this drum about.
Mm-hmm. But we're the
Yeah,
crazy
this is
ones.
what we've been talking about for at least for me.
I still remember when the South
long time.
The South Carolina bathroom ban was seen as
North Carolina
when it was like,
North Carolina.
That's insane. How could you do that? And it got like removed. And now everybody's doing bans. It's weird how we've changed in a handful of years.
Yeah, well, that's the power of a well-funded campaign that is ideologically based to make trans people an issue.
Mm-hmm.
When all we wanted to do was go sailing.
Yeah, go to the bathroom.
I've pinned your link by
and
the
take
way,
a piss
in the,
every now and again,
for us, Erica.
Okay, awesome.
All right. Is it good news time?
It's good news time. Let's go, Ember.
Let's go. Let's do this. Let's see. Good news is going to be here.
If it's not about genitals, what is it about trans women's bodies that you find most attractive? I paused for a second to consider the question. Then I replied that it's almost always their eyes. When I look into them, I see both endless strength and inconsolable sadness. I see someone who has overcome humiliation and abuses that would flatten the average person. I see a woman who is made to feel shame for her desires and yet had the courage to pursue them anyway. I see a woman who was forced against her will into boyhood, who held onto a dream that everybody in her life desperately tried to beat out of her, who refused to listen to the endless stream of people who told her that who she was and what she wanted was impossible. When I look into trans women's eyes, I see a profound appreciation for how fucking empowering it can be to be female. An appreciation that seems lost on many cissexual women who sadly take their female identities and anatomies for granted, or who perpetually seek to cast themselves as victims rather than instigators. In trans women's eyes, I see a wisdom that can only come from having to fight for your right to be recognized as female. A raw strength that only comes from unabashedly asserting your right to be feminine in an inhospitable world. In a trans woman's eyes, I see someone who understands that in a culture that's seemingly fueled on male homophobic hysteria, Choosing to be female and openly expressing one's femininity is not a sign of frivolousness, weakness, or passivity. It's a fucking badge of courage. Everyone loves to say that drag queens are fabulous, but no one seems to get the fact that trans women are fucking badass.
Good news, everyone! Tonight, mental health, trans medicine in history, Canada's first trans child, and more. Good news starts right now. A new study shows that gender-affirming hormone therapy is linked to lower depression in transgender adults. Shock and surprise! From CNN, gender-affirming hormone therapy may help patients with their mental health as well as their physical bodies, according to a new study. Quote, transgender, non-binary, and gender-diverse patients prescribed hormones had a 15% lower risk of moderate to severe depressive symptoms over 4 years of follow-up compared with those not prescribed hormones, said lead study author Dr. Sari Reisner, associate professor of epidemiology at University of Michigan School of Public Health, in an email. The study analyzed data from 3,592 patients of 2 federally qualified community health centers in Boston and New York City and looked at both their hormone therapy prescription and their patient health questionnaire scores, which indicated depression levels. Those participants who received hormone therapy had significantly lower risks of moderate to severe depression symptoms in their 4 years of follow-ups, according to the study published last month in the Journal of the American Medical Association Network Open. Quote, when gender-diverse patients access medically safe and effective hormone medication and care, they are more likely to experience healthier mental health outcomes over time, said Dr. Michelle Forcier, medical director for Folks Health, a mental health and wellness telehealth platform for people in the LGBTQIA+ community, and a clinician at Trans Health, a nonprofit clinic in Florence, Massachusetts. Quote, providing gender hormones did not just provide physical benefits to transgender and gender-diverse patients, but, yet again, we demonstrate that they improve their mental health outcomes as well, added Forcier, who is also Assistant Dean of Admissions at the Warren Alpert Medical School of Brown University. She was not involved in this research. The study comes amid President Donald Trump's executive orders that would restrict gender-affirming medical care for transgender youth, ban trans women from competing in most women's sports, and discharge transgender military members and recruits. Depression rates in people who are transgender, non-binary, or gender-diverse are a public health crisis and need to be addressed, Reisner said. Quote, trans people experience mental health disparities with higher rates of depression and suicidality than cisgender people. Trans people are literally dying. There is an urgent need, now more than ever, to care for us, support us, and ensure we have the life-saving care that we deserve and need to thrive. An estimated 8.3% of U.S. adults have experienced at least one major depressive episode, according to the National Institute of Mental Health. But a 2023 study found that about 33% of transgender people showed symptoms of depression. The higher rates and poorer health outcomes, including anxiety, depression, and tendencies towards self-harm, including suicidality, in transgender people, can be due to many factors, but a big contributor is the effects of bias and discrimination, Forcier said. Quote, minority stress and discrimination also leads to higher risks for economic disadvantage, housing and homelessness difficulties, substance abuse, HIV, and other factors. These cumulative disadvantages can significantly impact many aspects of physical and mental health, she said. Systematic problems, including stigma, attacks on civil rights, and preventing access to health care, exacerbate mental health challenges, added Dr. Melina Wald, a clinical psychologist at a private practice, Bespoke Health, in Connecticut and New York State, via email. Wald co-founded Columbia University Medical Center's Gender and Sexuality program. Wald was also not involved in this research. Bills targeting medical care for transgender people have been on the rise, Reisner said. In 2018, quote, 2 bills were introduced. And in 2023, there were 185 bills. Recent executive orders banning gender ideology and restricting the rights of trans people have devastating mental health consequences for trans communities, he added in an email. One strength of the study was the diversity in ages, races, ethnicities, and socioeconomic statuses of the population, Forcier said. Quote, this sample is much more reflective of the diversity of the U.S. population than previous specialty clinic-based studies, she said. The U.S. is an increasingly diverse population, and medical studies that reflect this offer more valuable insights to care. The study also shows that effective hormone care might be feasible in a more diverse community setting, Forcier said. Quote, that these patients benefited from care in these various primary care clinics in a diversity of communities suggests that effective gender-affirmative hormones is no longer restricted to urban, academic, or specialty clinics, she added by email. Overall, the scientific literature shows that hormone therapy is safe and effective, Forcier said. Quote, we have more than 25 years of consistent, persistent, insistent evidence that gender-affirmative approaches to care for transgender persons offer a variety of medical and mental health benefits. There are no studies that suggest withholding medically indicated safe, effective care offers any benefit at all. That said, care for depression in the transgender population should not end at hormone therapy, Wald said. Quote, while gender-affirming hormone therapy is crucially important to improving mental health, the importance of access to evidence-based psychiatric interventions for treatments of depression should not be overlooked, she said. It is a both-and approach rather than an either-or. A ship arrived in Edinburgh in 1809 and off stepped a new man, James Barry, an enrolling student at the city's prestigious medical school, despite nearly being refused admission, as his youthful features led many of the instructors to question if he was a boy not yet of age. He learned quickly and qualified for his MD in just 3 years. In 1812, he relocated to London to attend the surgery program at the United Colleges, which he graduated from on July 2nd, 1813. Just 4 days later, he received a British Army commission, and he was quickly promoted to assistant surgeon at the Royal Military Hospital in Plymouth. In 1816, he was sent to Cape Town, where he immediately treated the ailing child of Lord Somerset in a way described as spectacular, earning him the status of personal physician to the governor. In 1822, Somerset appointed Barry colonial medical inspector, which he began to leverage to enact changes in the lives of the people of Cape Town. He overhauled the water systems, enacted a proper sanitation system, established health care for prisoners, upgraded the care for the mentally ill, created quarantine protocols for the colony, and insisted on treatment for slaves as well as colonists as a matter of public health, and called out nobles for spreading medical misinformation. Often. He also continued to excel in his individual practice, performing what many of the age would consider medical miracles, including performing the first known C-section where both mother and child survived. By a European, anyway. In his honor, the child was named James Barry Munich, a name that stayed in the family until a descendant eventually became Prime Minister of South Africa, JBM Hertzog. In 1827, he was promoted to Surgeon of the Forces, but when Lord Somerset fell ill 2 years later, he abandoned his post to return to England to treat his ailing friend, where he remained until Somerset passed in 1831. He resumed his duties with a ferocity, even getting into a fight with another surgeon over improper procedure that led to a court-martial over conduct unbecoming a gentleman, which he was honorably acquitted of. Barry continued to rise through the ranks and serve all around the empire, improving medicine everywhere he went. As Inspector General of Hospitals, he fought for better food, sanitation, and proper medical care for prisoners and lepers, as well as soldiers and their families. He was relentless in his efforts to improve sanitation, nutrition, and general living conditions for oppressed groups, seemingly out of an understanding that preventing illness in the first place is just as important as knowing how to treat disease when it presents. He was outraged by unnecessary suffering, which led him to numerous confrontations with nobles and superior officers alike, yet no matter how harshly he was disciplined, he refused to relent. Surviving to become so old he was forced to retire, he lived long enough for photography. Seen here with his companion, who stayed with him from his time in South Africa until his passing, and their dog Psyche in Jamaica in 1862. Folks, this man was such a legend. Charles Dickens turned his life into a story, and upon his death, when his body was prepared for burial, a funeral worker claimed to discover his sex was female and attempted to blackmail his physician for marking the death certificate male, an accusation to which he wrote, quote, "It is none of my business whether Dr. Barry was male or female," and that he was, regardless of anatomy, Inspector General of Hospitals. Naturally, the Army ordered his records be sealed for 100 years in response to the possibility of a scandal. But in the 1950s, historians were able to discover the truth, which included letters to his mother and brother revealing that attending medical school as a suitable opportunity for his transition wasn't just something they supported, it was his mother's plan in the first place. After seeing the disaster the Trump administration has been for the United States, Canada's election last week swung hard to the sane, and Mark Carney was confirmed as Prime Minister. As it turns out, Carney has a trans child, and his opponents knew and tried to leverage it in a copycat of Trump's hateful ads last year, and failed entirely. Canada, it turns out, does not approve of hateful nonsense or picking on people's children. That's a lesson for the United States. But Sasha Carney is far more than a political football. They're a philosopher with some very intriguing thoughts on the nature of gender. Here is a short essay they wrote in 2022, published in Brink. The very first thing you are told when you begin to understand yourself as transgender is that you had no choice in the matter. Born this way, born in the wrong body. These same ascriptive phrases were the soup of the day on Tumblr in my teenage years of the mid-2010s, where anxious young trans and non-binary people reassured ourselves and each other that we were born into transness. Center-left human rights discourses embrace the tendency to theorize gayness and transness alike as unchanging, essential, and instilled in the body since birth. The ease of the narrative was, and remains, excellent fodder for shiny liberal media consumption. In a 2016 Guardian profile produced, it seems, for the consumption of cis people, trans university student Keith testifies that, quote, "It's not a choice. Nothing has happened in my life to make me trans. I was born trans." Under Born This Way logic, identity is not something formed through living in the world, but rather a nugget of information to be excavated, polished, and eventually presented to it. The belief in an innate gender is an understandable defense against a homophobic and transphobic world. Lady Gaga sang Born This Way to a pre-Obergefell versus Hodges America after all. Queers are prickly in the face of conversion therapy logic, which is correctly perceived as the attempts of dominant society to nudge aberrant desires towards a more palatable ones. If we as trans people did not choose our strangeness, if it is instead a naturalized, cradle-to-grave form of human difference, then maybe it follows that it can be tolerated in the name of equality, maybe even, in extraordinary circumstances, embraced. The alternative notion that queerness, particularly transness, is conditioned by the social rather than intrinsic to the self seems to be the domain of right-wing news outlets, Republican lawmakers, and the occasional classical liberal professor. Over the last few years, trans children have been thrown into the harsh spotlight of national news like never before. Over on Fox News, Tucker Carlson decries trans childhood as grotesque and an instance of ventriloquism where children are unwittingly puppeted to political ends. The logic of those in Carlson's camp, echoing and informing the early 2020s spate of anti-trans American legislation, what the historian Jules Gill-Peterson terms the recent emergence of the cis state, the specific wielding of state power to preserve the cisness of its subjects, is characterized by two entwined arguments. First, it is trans children who need to be protected from their own transness, their desire to transition, whether socially, hormonally, or surgically, will not help them, but rather lead them further astray. Second, and crucially, these protective interventions are required because the children in question are not truly trans. They were not born this way. Rather, they are corroded into transness, which sweeps the nation like a disease. As Nicholas Christakis, a socialist and Sterling professor at Yale, has written on Twitter, quote, I think there is a large element of social contagion with respect to transgenderism. He placed the desire to transition in the same category as bulimia, peanut allergies, and mild autism. When members of this camp, let's call them the social contagion critics, talk about trans people, they constantly invoke the horrors of a surgically changed body in hushed, fear-stricken tones. The primary body under threat is, for the social contagion critic, that of the young teenage or prepubescent girl, or person assigned female at birth. Always white, vulnerable, and constructed as lacking its own autonomy. It must be noted here that transphobes primarily construct trans men and trans masculine people as victims of transness, and trans women and trans feminine people as predatory perpetrators of it. The body at threat is always that of a young woman, or woman, whether at risk on the operating table or in a woman's restroom. The cover of Abigail Schreier's 2020 book, Irreversible Damage, an anti-trans text I have never read and never will, features this horror embodied. A young white girl with a pixie cut and a hole where her reproductive organs should be. That a sickness has been produced in our children that might lead them to mutilate what is healthy is the greatest, most soul-striking fear of them all. As gender-affirming surgical and hormonal procedures became increasingly thinkable over the course of the last few years, with waiting lists at gender clinics swelling to years-long wait times, their visibility circulates as the transphobes' nightmare. Surgery for the social contagion critic, is the logical endpoint of a society that allows its children to be cross-contaminated by inappropriately gendering ideas. A gender-affirming procedure is usually a life-affirming one, though statistics alone can't define the value of a trans life. A study led by Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health found that gender-affirming surgeries were associated with a 42% reduction in psychological distress and a 44% reduction in suicidal ideation. Even these statistical rebuttals, though, are unconvincing to the social contagion critic, since they hardly get to the heart of their fearmongering. The transphobe is terrified of the creep of inauthenticity and wields that terror effectively. The idea that ventriloquized aberrant gender can be separated from authentic manhood or womanhood works so well because it is the process of questioning the purity of one's motivations. Your desires are not your own, transphobes of all stripes argue, not truly desired. If you can only disentangle that toxic terminology of gender from what you truly want, you will be free to be in your own body without alteration. This is ultimately premised on the idea that transness alone is inauthentic, that all other expressions of gender are naturalized. Born in the wrong body activism attempts to rebut this by naturalizing transness. By testifying to the lack of choice we had over our trans identity, we hope to make ourselves immune from the social contagion critique. But what might it mean, instead, to reveal all gender as inauthentic? Gender is inherently a process of social relation. Who you are as a woman or a man or otherwise forms in relation to the gendering of those around you. A cisgender man in a locker room may feel socially compelled towards certain motions, phrases, or stories to affirm and solidify their own manhood in the world. What is so natural about that? Ask yourself now, how do your friends perform or do gender? Your mother, your father, your partner? Is the performance of cisgender heterosexual manhood, for instance, any less determined by who you are friends with, the insecurities you have around your body, or your desire to amass social capital? Brazilian waxes and pre-workout smoothies alike are gender-affirming processes. Shaving your face or wearing a dress can be too. We can scarcely conceive of gender without these social rituals and practices. There is no true Archimedean standpoint where we can live outside gender as we speak about it, cis or trans. We are, like Heidegger's subject, always already thrown into the world as gendered beings. To rephrase Christakis, I think there is a large element of social contagion with respect to gender, not specific to trans people, but with respect to the territory of gender itself. And what of it? Of course, not all forms of social contagion are healthy or positive. Gender can hurt as much as it can heal. But I believe we, as trans people, lose more than we gain by pretending that gender has ever been separable from the realm of the social. To slightly bastardize Lady Gaga, I'm on the right track, baby. I, just like you, whoever you are, was formed this way. The Trump administration has been marked by interesting negotiation tactics of late. With China, he tried to be the loud bully, got pushback, and quietly caved. Art of the deal. With the military trans ban, he tried to be a hyper-aggressive bully, got pushback, and quietly caved. Art of the deal. Now with Maine. First, some background. At a meeting between the new president and the governors, Trump made a comment about states needing to obey him and ban trans kids in their states from competing in sports. Maine's governor, Janet Mills, said no. We'll see you in court. Shortly thereafter, Trump's politicized federal agencies attempted to freeze funding for Maine schools, of particular note, the Child Nutrition Program. Naturally, since this was a clear violation of both the separation of powers and the government's duty, the state sued. Last month, a federal judge ordered that the administration unfreeze the held funds after finding that Maine was likely to succeed in the legal proceedings. Last Friday, the regime quietly dropped the matter, settling the case by giving Maine everything they wanted. Maine, in turn, agreed to drop their suit because they got everything they wanted. So, once again, Trump tried to be loud as a bully, got pushback, and quietly caved. The lesson here is when fascist cowards try to force you to obey, don't. That's the art of the deal. And while the good news should be obvious, let's say it anyway. The children and seniors will get to keep eating, and Maine's 2 trans student athletes will get to keep playing. Well done, Governor Mills. Unlike the cry-bully-in-chief, you actually are protecting the children. If you enjoy content like this, be sure to subscribe. Transpositions Weekly is the first and only weekly trans news show in the universe, and we need your support to keep this show going. Contribute at patreon.com/TheTransPositions. Spread the word all over social media to let people know we're here, and tell us what stories matter to you by joining the community on Discord. Discord, of course, is where the memes live, and our meme of the week was posted by Titan Uranus. And if you need to reinstall your gender, whether with recommended settings or custom features to suit your gender functioning needs, join us. Also, if you have good news concerning trans people you'd like to see reported on, you can tell us about that in the Discord as well. For the Transpositions, I've been Ember Belrad.
All right, everyone, That's new. That's new.
All right. Hello, hello. I just I wanted to do a quick introduction here before I play this interview. So for people who aren't aware, on March 19th, 2025, Marcy Reitgen, of Illinois in Florida at the time, in the Florida state capitol, was arrested after 60 seconds of stepping into the women's bathroom and washing her hands. She's currently facing some charges. I will add the link to her uh, her funding charity that I don't know who's putting it on. Surus the Skeptic was where I got the link from. So I will be dropping that unless somebody else wants to drop it for me, whichever. But yeah, so I reached out to Marcy. apparently, she's on Twitter a lot, but I don't do Twitter much anymore for my own mental health. So had a little bit of back and forth trying to get a hold of her, but finally was able to get a hold of her, and we sat down for an interview. It was pretty brief, but I do want to share it, at least the parts of it that were pertinent. We talked about quite a few things, but for right now, I do want to focus on the activism side of this and also spreading awareness about our situation, because we can't just let this go to sleep, right? I made a short earlier this week saying, eyes on the prize dolls, because that's what we need to do. We have our eyes on the prize, and keep pushing for our civil rights. Yeah. So I just wanted to give some preface to that. I didn't do much. I tried to do as little editing on this as possible. I did want to try to fit it into a bite-sized time slot, but I didn't want to overrun the show with it, because we have a lot of things to cover this week. We've already ended up dropping a few things here and there, because we need to make room for the things that we're covering right now. So, trying to find where I stashed that away at. All right, is that the right one? Yes, here we go. All right, so this is me sitting down with Marcy to discuss what happened in Florida and how things are going to unfold moving forward. Thank you for sticking around. But I'm glad you're here. Yeah, well, your story's been we've been covering it pretty intensely over on the TransPositions, because it's an important situation that's happening here as far as where how civil rights unfold moving forward. So yeah, let me ask you a couple of quick questions, and then you'll be on your way back to enjoying your soup and sandwich or whatever you ordered.
Mac and cheese.
Mac and cheese, yes. All right. So first, let's meet Marcy, and teach me how to say your last name so I don't say it wrong.
Rinka. No, I'm kidding. It's
that's what I thought. That's how I've been saying it. Reitgen. Am I saying it right? Reitgen. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So Marcy, just a quick introduction, whatever.
I want to have my cam in focus so I can not mess it up. So I feel like sorry.
Oh, you're good. No, I bet you've done hundreds of interviews at this point, right? I mean,
Not dozens, yeah.
I get a little fatigued about it.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, but it's what I have to do. I feel like a responsibility to do it for the community.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Yeah, that you make time for even these tiny little channels like mine. But can we meet you real quick? Who are you? I know a little bit about you from the Dead Domain interview, but let's pretend no one else has watched that.
I like to write on my typewriter. I like candy cigarettes. I'm a Catholic. I like drinking out of coconuts sometimes. You can buy them. You can get a little drill, put a straw in it. It's amazing. I like, what do I like? I like a lot of stuff, I like my family. I like being goofy, I like hanging out at my church group. Yeah, that's me. That's some stuff about me.
So, are you from Illinois originally, or did you move there at some point?
I'm a fifth generation Chicagoan.
Oh goodness. Okay. So, was this your first time visiting Florida, or had you been there before in the past?
I've spent a lot of time in my life in Florida, probably about a collective at least a year or so. My family has property down there, so I was down at the property.
Okay. Yeah.
I have some family in Florida, so
there's some familial connections down there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's Florida. A lot of people vacation there and have at least some point in their time in their life where they visit Florida. Do you think you'll be visiting Florida again after this?
Yeah, I love Florida. I mean,
Florida.
they want to like get rid of me, but I still love Florida. You know.
Yeah, the people there are wonderful, and the climate is amazing. So, have you received a date for your return to Florida? Your mandated return to Florida?
My arraignment is on May 8th, but
May
my
8th.
has been waived for that. But my trial's probably gonna be in somewhere in July, sometime in July. So keep an eye out for that, folks. It's
Yeah.
folks at home.
Probably gonna be a circus, but
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy, dude.
so I'm assuming, based on the whole situation, that you do identify as a she/her for your preferred pronouns.
I identify as she/her, although I am an alpha male, but I do identify as she/her. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw the T-shirt. It's pretty epic too.
I think I want. You know, look. Hey, if you're watching this, I'm probably gonna have it out by then. So I'm gonna try to look at my Twitter. It's gonna be out.
Yeah, I saw it on, was it Twitter or Blue Sky? I can't remember. I'm kind of boycotting Twitter, which is why it took me so long to get back to you. So thank you so much for coming on such a short notice too.
Yeah, I like Blue Sky. You just don't have the same kind of reach on there.
Yeah.
Also, it's like kind of like an echo chamber. I mean, Twitter's an echo chamber, but it's for the opposite side, so it feels like I'm in the mud, which I think is good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'd mentioned Vivian. Vivian's the queen of threads right now. I mean, really. I don't usually go on threads too much unless I see something pop up about her. But do you ever threads?
I have threads, but I don't really have any followers. I don't think I've posted anything. But at Marcy Rankin, you know,
Yeah.
I have an followers, which isn't really a lot, but considering I had 0 like a couple weeks ago, it's
Yeah.
500. But
you've become thrust into the spotlight. How's that been on you, like on your mental health and well-being?
I'm like really like out of it. Like I'm like really emotional and kind of like loony. It's been bad for my mental health. I'm not okay, but I do want to do the right thing, you know. And I feel like it's also kind of like survival. Like if I don't like fight about this and like make a fuss about this, it's gonna get forgotten. And this is a big deal. Like this should be in the headlines like everywhere. You know, like I was in prison for using the women's bathroom. That's crazy. You know, like it's nuts. And you know, like everyone talks about these laws, like they seem so like abstract. Like politics seems so abstract. You know, these laws seem so abstract to most people when they talk about the bathroom bills. You know, I think a very slim majority of Americans support it. You know, these laws seem abstract. You know, but this is the reality. This is what these laws are. They're imprisoning us, you know, just for being, you know, transgenders or whatever. And it's a shame. It's a shame. Yeah.
I mean, here's the lowdown on that too. Like if you hadn't told them, you had to let them know that you were a trans woman beforehand, because these I don't know what you call them, clocking laws are ridiculous, and they're going to I mean, who makes that decision? Who makes that determination when it comes to clocking someone walking? Because you are as femme as a woman can be. You would not.
Thank you.
Yeah, walking into the bathroom, no one's going to be like, "Oh, there's a man in the bathroom." You know what I mean? So
you know what's a lot of fun is next year when I go back to spring break, I get like 100 trans men and 100 trans women to very passing. The rule is the discriminator is to be very passing. We get them to all go and follow the law at the Florida State Capitol building next time I go back there. I feel like that would be ground. I feel like that would cause even more of a commotion. Because I'm you know, originally I was going to do this one and done, but they send me on a path of like no return, of like,
you're an activist now. Welcome to the scene. Yeah.
And this isn't like over. I'm not a vengeful or angry person, and I'm gonna always act with love. But politically, things are gonna change, and I'm gonna make real political change. I'm gonna become a political activist now, I think. And I really don't know how to do that, but I'm gonna make sure it happens.
Yeah. I'm glad we're happy to have you. We're looking for people to lead the way at this point, especially people of your generation, which unfortunately, unfortunately, with your generation, we did see a kind of a swing back in the other direction, even among the younger folks
Boomers.
in this
Well, yeah,
last election.
really sexy right now. Everyone thinks fascism is sexy. A lot of the Zoomers think fascism is sexy, which I get because it's kind of sexy, but it's evil. You know, like there's a lot of sexy things that are evil. You know, I don't support fascism.
Yeah, it's got
Even though
it's got its way to appeal to. It's an aesthetic that they try to appeal to younger folks. Yeah.
all politics is aesthetic. I think the trans issue, so it's the most clear example. You know, because these people will say they support bathroom bills, and then my mugshot gets posted on Instagram and on these people's stories, and they're like, "What the fuck?" You know, the same people who probably voted for this are like, "What the fuck?" But you know what? I love them because we can sway them. We keep them in the circle. You know, I love the Republicans. I love the Democrats. I love the Independents. I love everyone. You know, and we got to get a big tent. We got to get the big tent with everyone. You know, and that doesn't mean sacrificing on ideology or principles, but it means meeting people where they're at. You know.
Yeah, I can understand what you mean by that. The idea to remove this from as a bipartisan issue is, I mean, I thought, by this point in time we'd have removed like racism and things like that from being a bipartisan issue too, but they're pushing back on that as well. So I mean, what are we gonna do?
I hate the well, actually, I love everyone, so I love the grapers, but I hate graper. I hate graperism.
Yeah.
Nick Fuentes was condemned by the USCCB. He doesn't talk about that, but Catholic bishops, like everywhere, or not everywhere, in America, condemned him because he's not really known outside of America. But yeah, like our thing of Catholic bishops condemned him and condemned graperism, and so no one talks about that. But he's a Catholic technically because he hasn't been formally excommunicated, but he's on rocky roads.
Yeah. I'm glad you're very vocal against the Groyper movement, because that is exactly when you talk about Gen Z.
Yeah.
That's
we can't have prejudice. Prejudice is bad.
Yeah. So, like before any of this happened, right? Had you ever been part of any kind of civil disobedience or any participated in protests in any capacity?
No, not really. But after this happened, there was a little, not to do with me, but about something else. On my campus, there was a little protest about trans rights. Mm-hmm. And so I actually went up to the protesters and I was saying, you hear about that trans girl who got arrested in Florida? And they're like, yeah, that's crazy. I'm like, yeah, it's so wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a crazy world out there.
Most people think that you're from Florida because of that story. They're like, oh, that Florida girl that got arrested. And it's like, oh, she's not from Florida, but maybe we'll help where they are.
It's a great... I'm a Chicago. I feel so conflicted because I spend so much time in Florida. I have a deep bond in Florida. I always wanted to leave Chicago for Florida, but I am a Chicagoan in my heart, and I also really love Florida. I just can't abandon my city. You know, it's my city.
Oh yeah, Chicago people have a lot of pride. How do you like your pizza?
How do I like my what?
How do you like your pizza?
Very deep dish.
Yeah.
What's in New York style? I honestly, not to sound elitist here, but my brother and my father, they're architectural masterminds, and they built a pizza oven in our house. And so we make our quattro formaggi. You know, we're Italian. We make some quattro formaggi. That shit is the bomb.com. That's my favorite pizza type. But as a loyal Chicagoan, I love Luminati's. You know, I love Italiamos. It's a very niche one. Most people don't know that. I don't want to say too many restaurant locations because it might make
Giordano's is my favorite Chicago style pizza.
Yeah, Giordano's is good. Love Giordano's.
Giordano's so thick. Yeah, you're getting me distracted now. I'm hungry. So let's go back to that day, right? To where you're in Florida and you go to the Capitol. You say that were there already people there waiting, prepared for you to do that? Was there any kind of coverage?
There. By the way, I didn't write letters to the officers. Most people misunderstand they're like the authorities, but I wrote letters to the people who wrote the bill. So like it's on them. They were if anyone reported me, it wasn't the police officers who decided. It was state legislatures who said that they were going to do this, which is so stupid, really, because obviously it's such a political L for them. It's obviously a personal L for me, but it's such horrible optics. It's such incredibly horrible optics. I don't know who was stupid enough. The sponsors of the bill aren't responding to replies from their office. I think I'm going to write them a nice letter. I'm going to write them a letter saying, just with my mugshot, this is what you did to me. I'm going to send it to them. I think that's what I'm going to do.
Have you considered sending copies of all the letters to the AP when you send them out?
No, that's a lot of stamps. I just sent out the letter. And I didn't have any extras really, or I had them, and so
if you need someone to buy you stamps, we can crowdfund you some stamps, girl.
Or because I need it in Florida and it's expensive.
Yeah.
I don't want to be one of those people with GoFundMe's who are like,
well,
I don't want to be scamming people or something,
If other people were to do some crowdfunding for you, would you be okay with that?
That'd be cool. Yeah,
okay. Just putting that on the in the notes here, and if something like that were to come up, you'd be okay with us at the TransPositions and elsewhere sharing the link for you.
Oh yeah, that'd be super.
I just don't wouldn't want to do anything on your behalf or anything with you in mind without. But yeah, I know attorney fees and everything it can really stack up. So whatever can.
Probably be. It's going to be travel expenses, and like a couple weeks in a Tallahassee hotel is expensive as hell. Yeah. So that's going to be a thing. I feel like a tie to Florida now. I've always been like a Florida patriot, even though I'm not from Florida. I'm like a Florida nationalist a little bit in terms of the culture of like we need to have more mini golf courses and shit like that. I have a deep affinity, a deep love for Florida, and I want to be more involved in Florida. I want to like rah Florida, because I love Florida, and we need to take Florida back,
Yeah.
Florida, yeah.
When you're all grown up, you should get down there and run against Ron DeSantis. That's.
Yeah, well, he's term limited, but I've thought about running for the state senate and sitting at the same people who make that law, sitting next to them.
That would be beautiful. That would be a beautiful development. So, you go in there. In the bathroom, you didn't even use the bathroom or anything. You just walked right over to the sink and turned the water on, and the cops were in the door right behind you. Is that right?
Yeah, originally I was going to pray the rosary, but I didn't have enough time. So I washed my hands. The officers told me to leave, and then they arrested me. They brought me to a place where they put me in handcuffs, and I sat in a conference room for about 60 minutes in handcuffs before they took me to jail. And jail was gross and disgusting, and I hated it.
Yeah, they don't make those places pleasant for you, do they? And did they put you in like a solitary situation because of the situation?
I had no cellmates, which is good because, rape.
Yeah.
I haven't. So I had no cellmates, and I'm very glad for that. I don't know if that was an intentional thing, like a courtesy or, whatever. But it's so isolating also being alone. It sucks. Like, because you just don't even know what to do. You're just like, it's like, we're so stimulated nowadays. You have fucking everything. You have lights, sounds, camera, action, everything so fast, it winks people out a little bit, but like, I don't know, like when you're fully removed from stimuli, when you're just in a box and your only entertainment is like peeking outside the window to see if like you can catch the corner of the TV with your eye. You can't even hear it. You can't even really see. It's something else. It really is. It really changed me. Jill changed me. You never know what it's like to not have free will until you don't have free will.
I know you weren't in there for a terribly long amount of time, but did you have access to your medication, including your gender affirming care?
I won't ever get gender affirming care when they put me in prison, which they probably will. I won't get that, and I didn't get that there.
You're not gonna have access to any of that probably in Florida. That's unfortunate.
And they
But
might shave.
shave your head.
Yeah, that's what they do to trans prisoners. They have protocols for that.
Oh, that's like that's very dystopian, right?
That
It's
is.
it's hard to wrap your head around the fact that we live in a world where a woman can be forcefully forcefully detransition. No, they'll never detransition you, honey. You know that. You're always going to be you. You're always going to be Marcy to the rest of us out here in the world. But they're going to try to make you.
I mean, it is forceful detransition. That's the correct term.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they
Like
can't change who you are inside, though. Is what I was getting at.
Yeah, you can't change who you are inside. That's true. But I mean, detransitioning like in prison, like forcefully, and like probably having a male cellmate and getting decoded, getting raped. It's gonna be kind of traumatic. But my therapist says I'm not really like, I'm kind of in denial right now. I'm not really processing things. Because like I know I say I go to prison and I probably will, but I just like my mind, I'm just like, I won't go to prison. I just keep saying that to myself because it's like easier to like say that than to like actually accept like,
Yeah.
you know.
So
Sorry.
it's no, you're good. I don't know how I would process that in myself. So I can't expect someone your age to be able to process that, to be able to handle that sort of unwinding of the country that you believed in and felt protected in and felt that would stand up for your civil rights, and then to have that your civil rights to actually be used against you, and now you're going, girl, my heart goes out to you. It really does. The during the incident, were there any pictures or videos taken? I know they probably weren't inside the courthouse, but like on your way out,
But a journalist friend took them, and the police had some of them. And I don't know if my journalist friend, I asked her if I could, an article asked if they could use it. She said no. So I don't know if I can post on my socials, but there are photos of me getting arrested.
Yeah.
Historic, asked me,
right.
I think I didn't originally, when I first went on a podcast, they were like, oh fuck, the lights are coming. What the fuck? Sorry, this is like on auto, but like when I first went on a podcast, they were like, you're gonna be in you should take your dress. It's gonna be in the Smithsonian, and I just kind of laughed of like, what are you talking about? And now I kind of, people keep saying it to me, and I'm like, now I'm kind of getting it. Like, yeah, it probably is gonna probably be in the Smithsonian.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I've actually I've been accused of comparing your situation to Rosa Parks by critics, but what else is there to compare it to historically? I don't want to put you in a corner where you say I'm the trans Rosa Parks, but I'm
Trina Parks.
That's what I really don't. I'm really not interested in taking back Troon. It's like that's the dumbest one of the insults that they come up with.
Yeah, it's not even originally. I mean, it is derogatory, but it originally wasn't like minted by right wingers. It was minted by like the LGBT board of 4chan.
Yeah.
It was by the gay community. Because we're so creative, the LGBT community, that we can even come up with our own slurs.
Yes, it is more creative than Tim's, which is what the gender critical movement.
That's so cringe, and it feels so forced. All of them are like, a lot of them are like sexually obsessed weirdos. These TERFs, and they're like the female incels, but most of them aren't even female. Let's be real. A lot of these TERFs online, they don't have a profile pic, but a lot of them are male. There's a lot of cases of that, many such cases of these male anti-trans activists, because we look at the public polling, women are far more likely to support trans people than men are, and it's not even close. It's really, And it's weird that the conservatives are trying. Well, I mean, it's actually smart and intentional. The conservatives are trying to frame it as, women against trans people, because that's where they actually have the disadvantage. Because women support trans people far more than men support trans people, and it's not really close.
Yeah.
And it's just, men are more naturally homophobic, and there's a lot of reasons for that. And I'm not misandristic. I get tempted, of course, but there can't ever be a war between the sexes because everyone's sleeping with the enemy.
Yeah. It's
Well,
like you say, not all men, but always a man, though. So
I love that. People,
Yeah.
all these people are like, oh, I hate men, but I love men.
It's like, yeah, that's proof that sexuality is not a choice, because
yeah,
you're
that holiday's not a choice.
So as far as the charges that you're facing, are these going to be considered sex crimes?
No,
Okay.
I don't think. Pretty sure, because I can't see too much about legal stuff, but it's trespassing. Technically, originally it was going to be under the bathroom bill, but they actually could get 11 months instead of like 60 days with trespassing, and so they're gonna try to charge me. They're charging me on trespassing, and so it'll be.
And they're doing that just to try to make a point, then to try to get you something longer, to make a point about this is what happens. They're going to make an example out of you, Marcy.
Unfortunately,
but
it's sad. The whole thing's messed up.
Yeah.
I'm just a kid.
Yeah. Get the whole future ahead of you, and
yeah. Not every time I do a job application though, this is gonna show up. Like this is just like tied to me unless I like.
You know what? I would just offer you I would ask for an autograph before I offered you the job, though, because it took a lot of guts to do what you did.
LGBT, it took a lot of balls. If there's any LGBT stations that I need a job this summer, internship, any LGBT organizations in Chicago. I'd also be willing to go to New York, California, but especially Chicago. DM me on Twitter, maybe DM me on TikTok, but yeah, DM me.
Yeah. So were you searched by a male or female officer, if you're allowed to say so, while you were
female? Yeah.
Well,
they asked me, but they assumed female, which is funny because they were arresting me because I wasn't supposed to be. But a lot of the officers who arrested me privately told me that they thought it was wrong, but it's what they had. They're just following orders, which always holds up in international court. I love the officers who arrested me, though. They're super nice folk. I love them, except for this one guy. But I still love him. But he was nice. But I love the officers who arrested me.
Oh, for sure. You gotta keep spreading that love and showing that smile. That's gonna take you all the way, girl. Yes. You're vibe. I don't know if it's if it's something that you're putting on a mask, whatever. Whatever it is that you're doing to look strong.
I mean, I'm more emotional behind the scenes. I cry more, but
yeah,
not good to cry in front of cameras or on the internet. But I mean, this is sort of genuinely who I am, my personality. I'm a straight shooter. I'm like this in real life, and it was actually one of the things of when I got on the internet, one of the challenges for me that was tough. And I guess I answered it the right way. I just didn't think I'd be successful, but I'm on the internet now. I guess I'm kind of successful at the internet. But one of the challenges for me was all these people on Twitter are dunking on each other and shit and being cruel to each other. And I was like, oh, is that what I have to do to be on the internet? Is I have to be one of those people who's dunking on other people? I was really conflicted about that. But it turns out I don't. I can still show Christian radical love. I can love my enemies on the internet. And that's what I do.
Yes. Defeat them with kindness and love.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as the way the media covered your story, both on both sides of the spectrum of media coverage,
didn't cover all almost. Blaze and Reason were the only places I got, and Reason was very charitable because the libertarians, and so they kind of trying They like kind of like trannies a little bit, like, you know, well, a lot of libertarians. I love libertarians, but a lot of them are perverts, you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of libertarians are chasers. A lot of chasers are libertarians, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I've found that to be true. The Blaze though. So how did Glenn Beck's institution handle your situation? Did they dead name you and misgender you the whole time?
Charitable. I actually went on Alex Stein. Do you know who he is?
Oh my gosh, yes, I know Alex Stein. Oh my gosh.
He was very kind to me, and okay, he was as kind to me as he could be without getting totally destroyed by his audience. Which, you know, he was kind of he said some gross things, but I think he was as good as he could be, and I'm actually really grateful to him. I love him, like, and I not only love him, but I like genuinely have yeah, let's go Alex Stein, because he was actually very fair to me. I feel like, but you know, I kind of like totally mess with a lot of these people because I like wear my alpha male shirt and I'm like, I'm an alpha male. Like all these like turfs try to own me. They're like, you're a male. I'm like, yeah, I'm an alpha male.
Not just a male, I'm half a male.
You know, it's funny though, the Daily Wire bros, the conservatives as it were, you know, they always, you know, hairstyles wear dress and it's like, oh, it's so feminine, so gay, so disgusting, so feminine, you know, so effeminate. But as soon as someone transitions, then they become like the chief of masculinity, like the head macho masculinity, like beard, hairy chest, big muscles. It's like there's no in between.
Yeah, you can't win with it. You're Schrodinger's queer. You're they'll call you a girl until you say, yeah, I'm a girl. And they're like, no, you'll never be a girl. It's like, make up your mind.
Is that a friend? Is that a friend of phrase that people say?
What's that?
Schrodinger's queer, something that they say, or is this something you're?
It's a play on Schrodinger's cat. You know.
No, I get that, but like, were you the first person to come up with this? Because I love it.
I just coined it just now in this conversation.
I love. How do you actually start using that phrase? Schrodinger's queer. That's so perfect. Schrodinger's queer. That's so true.
That's the best way I could think of to describe it. So are there any misconceptions or lies or false narratives about your situation that you've read or seen?
A lot of people say I'm attention seeking. I mean, as an activist, you do need to seek attention. Obviously not for myself, but for the thing that happened. Mm-hmm. You know? And like, people don't understand. I'm like fighting to stay out of jail. Like, I'm going on the internet to shift public opinion so I don't go to prison. Like, people need to understand like the context of what's going on, you know, and that I'm not just like going on the internet to like, oh my gosh, I'm famous. Like I'm going on the internet to kind of survive on the internet, you know, to survive in real life, to not be locked in a cell with no key for a while, locked in a little cage, you know?
Yeah. We got to keep an eye on you too while you're in there. I mean,
what did you say?
We got to keep an eye on you while you're in there. So, keep writing letters.
For everyone. I'll be in Leon County. Look up what the courts say in Leon County. Yeah.
Leon County, Florida. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Tallahassee.
Yeah. Okay. That's great because we need to keep cameras and correspondences going with you while you're there, because if you disappear into the system, and that's the worst thing that could happen at this point, for you to just for the world to forget about you and what's happened here. So keeping you in the forefront. I'm thinking maybe like a counter of your days once they figure out worst case scenario, once they figure out your sentencing, something where we can keep people in the know. Is there any?
Would be great. We pull out for fun girls. Yeah.
So
because I don't have I'm just stuck. You know what I mean? You can't really Instagram or Twitter. Sorry, continue.
No, you're good. I don't mean to bowl over you when you start talking. There's a little bit of a delay, I think, but it's not too bad at all. So this could escalate further beyond just Florida. I mean, this could butterfly effect out into the rest of the states, and it could have a global effect, really, on the way that these types of laws are handled in the future, the way your case unfolds. It's a lot of weight. Is there? Obviously, you did think this through a bit, but is there anything that that has come as a surprise about the whole situation to you?
Well, it's weird because people like when I go on like I do AMAs and shit, people like act like I'm a celebrity or whatever. But I don't even have any followers, you know. At Marcy Rankin on all socials, everyone, Twitter, Twitter, YouTube, whatchamacallit, the especially the TikTok and the Twitter. And I
That's
also
what
have
the
an
kids do these days. They do
No,
the TikTok.
yeah, the TikTok. But I'm just surprised by the whole thing of like how cruel people are. Like I would think TERFs have like at least the aesthetical taste to realize like dunking on someone who was in prison for being trans is just not good optics. But people tend to be optically blind a lot of times in their own.
I mean, there's the celebration. So, like, what type of changes would you like to see come from this interaction? From this, your interaction with the Florida law enforcement. What would you like to see develop from this?
I want every lawmaker who signed on to it. I want their political career to be over. I want the sponsors to never be able to walk in public again without feeling deeply ashamed. I think these laws should not exist. I think they should be repealed. And I think everyone who supported it ever should feel a little bit guilty. In the same way the people who did Jim Crow should be guilty. Same way the people who did the Nazis should be guilty. Not that they're the exact same thing, but they're both pretty evil. And I think these laws should be repealed. I think we should have more protests. I'm tired of the community. I feel like the community, we always do the activism and lies, the slacktivism, of, oh, this is so horrible, this is so tragic. We need to go out there and we need to have dolls putting flowers in guns like in the 60s, man. We need to bring that back. That's yeah. We need to bring that back. Like I love Flower Child. Like I want to be a flower child. I want to love my enemies. I want to love my brothers and sisters. And we can't just sit down and sit on our hands and knees and say, oh well, they're taking our rights away. It's too bad. We need to fight. We need to get in the mud. We need to get in the muck. And no violence, obviously, but we need to get politically organized. If you're a trans man or a trans woman who's passing and be willing to go to Florida, DM me on Twitter. We just need to get organized generally, not just with me. Start your own organizations. Work with other organizations. Please organize. That's the future. That's the future. Read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. That shit's great. We need to organize. We need to fight. We can't just take this shit sitting down. It's going to be messy. It's going to be ugly. Freeze it, polarize it, and personalize it. That's what I believe. Yeah. That's honestly a great way to end. Going to leave on a good high.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Marcy.
Marcy.
At Marcy Rankin on all socials, MarcyRhentgen, and link them in the description, please.
Yes, we sure will. We appreciate you for coming on with us, Marcy. And best of luck. We'll be following things. If you're ever willing to do a follow-up after court or anything, we'd love to have you back on.
In jail after court. So we'll see about that. But
I hope not. I hope that the world sees reason at some point. But well.
Yeah. I hope you have a great day. I hope everyone watching, listening to this has a great day. Please pray for me. Please spread my story. Please spread my socials. It's the only way I have like a voice is if they're grown. Try to get me. By the way, if you're here and you want to do direct action, try to get me on podcasts, email podcasts, DM podcasts about having me on because I only have so much time a day to network. When other people do it for me, it helps so much. We get like quadruple the power. DM them about me because so much of it's like just not getting responses back. So like if people are mass DMing, I'll get out a bunch of responses. I would love that. Thank you all. Please, everyone, DM, organize, email these networks about this issue. Get them to say, I want you to cover this issue more. I want you to talk about this issue. Try to get me on TYT. Just email all of these people, try to, and DM all these people, try to get me on their shows. I hope you all have a great day. I love you and good night.
All right. Well, thank you for sitting through that interview with me there. I'm Yeah, I don't know about TYT either. I would lean into that. They had freaking Marjorie Taylor Greene on the other night. And yeah, the interview was pretty smooth, except I don't necessarily agree with that whole all passing kind of thing. I think that getting non-passing, whatever that means, people and passing people mixed would send a better message, because not all cis people pass by anyone's standards, and passing is like an arbitrary thing on like a winding spectrum. I don't know that that's there was but I don't, is that the direct self deprecating language that this younger generation is using? I don't know, but anyway, yeah, and TYT sucks, but I'm not going to support anything that Jink or Anna are doing right now. I think Anna is doing a show with Jillian Michaels, who's the cringiest transphobe I can think of, and Anna's a transphobe herself. Yeah, so I don't want anything to do with those people. But I think Marcy may be disconnected a bit from social media, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not going to make excuses for that, but that's what she's, what the kind of stuff she's wanting to do. It's whatever. But yeah, if you're wanting to keep track of this story, I don't think. Do I sound very low? I can turn myself up. But yeah, we're gonna move right into sports anyway. So yeah. Yeah, that's sad. I'm sorry reading the comments. I don't know. Yeah, it's segregating passing and non-passing, and it's going to be arbitrary too. One person's opinion could be different from another. Some people might think I passed, some people might not. I don't know. But it's a weird metric. I'm gonna go ahead and just move right into sports though, and then we'll come back to the show and wrap things up. All right, so passing the ball, as the euphemisms go, to Carly.
USA fencing on trial. Yep, the $5,000 scandal that wasn't got a hearing on Capitol Hill. Nikki Hiltz still strong at Grand Slam Track Miami. We have the highlights. Viva Chifoni, a queen of the court, gets her crown. We have the highlights there. And we talked to the visionaries behind a groundbreaking sports book for kids that a certain Shar Sports One personality was a part of. We meet the creative force behind Athlete is a Gender. Hello again, everybody. This is Transposition Sports. I'm Carly Chardonnay Webb. At the top, USA Fencing had a hearing in the House Subcommittee on the Department of Governmental Efficiency on Wednesday, and it was the most inefficient use of time in American history. The most egregious parts of this 3-hour farce, the chair of the committee was Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. Her level of ignorance speaks for itself. And the expert witnesses included budding professional transphobe Peyton McNabb and the $5,000 fencer Stephanie Turner. You're a professional transphobe for money. Pay it all trans, that's what you do. You're a professional transphobe for money. Wiley Gaines will employ you. Texas Representative Pat Fallon spent most of his time misgendering people.
For instance, what my colleague said, Will Thomas was 462nd best male swimmer for 3 years. And then he was winning events when he competed with women. Female gold medalists in the 100, 400, and 800 would not even qualify to compete for the gold in the men's division. Marathon, the best marathon female would be 90th against the men. Best triathlete female would be 50th against men. And Major League Baseball has had exactly 0 women play on an opening day roster. NFL, NHL, NBA, again, 0. So let me ask you this question. I'm very curious to hear your answer.
Yes, sir.
Would you do you think it's fair for a man that identifies as a man to directly compete against a woman?
In a mixed event, sir.
Okay. So you think that's fine? A man can compete against a woman in the women's division?
In the women's division, sir, they must go through 1 year.
Right. So
hormone
what I'm saying, so
replacement
a man that's identifying as a man cannot, you're not cool with them fencing against women?
Men compete against women in mixed events all the time, sir. They're a plurality of our events.
And there was South Carolina Representative William Timmons, who got into an exchange with USA Fencing Chairman Damian Layfeld. It was over the Ted Stevens Act.
Mr. Layfeld, you said earlier that the Ted Stevens Act prohibited you from discriminating against biological men that identify as women. What are you referencing?
Congressman, I may have misspoke. I don't recall saying that. Could you remind me specifically what my words were in that scenario,
Specifically
sir?
said that the statute, that you were statutorily prohibited from telling transgender men that they are not allowed to participate in women's competitions.
Sir, I believe what I was referring to was a statute within the Ted Stevens Amateur Sports Act, which prevents any NGB from being more restrictive than their international federation. We have consulted with very competent legal counsel.
Now, Layfield explained this in his opening remarks. He explained this throughout this hearing in regards to USA Fencing's transgender athlete policies, which are allowed by the world governing body for fencing. Of course, Timmons has to show his ignorance. After all, you know what he is. He's a Republican.
Transphobia for a stronger America.
This executive order prohibits all entities that receive federal funds, which I know you do not, of allowing transgender men to compete in women's sports. So that's basically your entire pipeline. Your main purpose is to be competitive, is to figure out who we're going to send to the Olympics, or one of your main purposes. Is that fair?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, so you have women that are participating in high school and in college, and they're never going to compete against transgender men because that's federally prohibited.
This hearing was a mess at every level. But you want to know what the biggest sticking point with me was? You know, we had a room full of people in Capitol Hill talking about transgender people, yet there was no transgender people among those who were in the discussion. True to form. The usual suspects were there, like Green, Nancy Mace.
That's not a thing. That's not biology. It's not science. And you sound like a lunatic.
And the women
Should
that
young
I
girls
hear from
just
at
get
the
used to
National
penises
Women's
in their
Law
locker
Center
rooms and showers? My next
are not-
question, yes or no? Should little girls get used to penises in their locker rooms and showers?
Really? Really, Nancy? Really? Are you fixated on genitalia again? Carly, run the PSA right now.
Okay, this is for all the cisgender people out there. Cisgender people, huddle up, huddle up. I'm talking to you. Look, we of the transgender community would really like it if you quit speculating on people's genitalia. Not only is it rude, it's really kind of creepy. I even wrote a song about it. Want to hear it? Here it go. They're creepy and they're kooky. They're right wing and they're spooky. Discussing bits is ooky. Just stay away from me. But overall, this was just another example of the farcical exercise we've seen in regard to how transgender Americans are being treated right now. And this was a new level, a frightening level of ignorance in line with the policies of the Trump administration. And it rubbed salt in the wounds given the Supreme Court decision on Tuesday that allows a ban on service by transgender people within the nation's armed forces to go through. And in the crosshairs of all of it are 1.6 million transgender Americans. And all we want to do is live our lives, contribute to our communities, and achieve that life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness thing. Of course, the fearful and the bigoted, the Confederate Republicans in that subcommittee hearing don't want to hear about that at all. And now, some trans joy alert action going on right here. Nikki Hiltz, Grand Slam track, Miami 1500 meters last Saturday. And they started their kick from 4th position. They got all the way to 2nd. It was a late surge, just a little bit too late. They couldn't catch the eventual winner for Weni Helu of Ethiopia. She won it in 4 minutes, 6.96 seconds. Now, turn the page. Sunday, 800 meters. Now remember, Hiltz, they got it done at the GST opener in Kingston, Jamaica. And they were in contention to do it again in Miami. But Mary Mara of Kenya, too strong. Hiltz was second, Helu was third. But Helu's win in the 1500 plus this third pushed her just across the line to give her the overall short distance win for the event, with Hiltz in second. However, Hiltz is in the lead in the series standings overall in the short distances, with round 3 of the tour coming up in Philadelphia starting May 30th. And last Friday, Brazilian Superliga Feminina Volleyball Championship Final. And you know it's been a dream season for Tiffany Abreu. 40-year-old outside hitter for Osasco was flirting with retirement at the beginning of the year, but decided, nah, I want to play some more. So she got back in the chase. And Osasco rolled through the season, rolled through the quarterfinal and the semifinal. Tiffany getting big kills and big shots in both. And Friday night against Sese Valibaru with all to play for, Tiffany was on her marks. 18 kills on the night, 24 points overall, including this.
Outra vez o contra-ataque desenhado. Giovanni olhou, lá vem Tiffany pra acabar!
The clinching kill, her third in 3 rounds to take the series 3 games to 1. It was Osasco's first title in 13 years, and for Tiffany, it was history. She became the first Brazilian transgender athlete to win a major title in her country. And afterwards, she had this to say.
Diante de tanta luta, com 40 anos, tá jovem, conquistar esse título tão sonhado, Tiffany.
É uma felicidade imensa. Saber que eu já fui chamada de não fecha set, chamada de não fecha jogo, chamada que eu não decidi quando eu decidi. E eu decidi. Decidi jogo de semifinal, decidi jogo de quartas finais, decidi hoje. Porque eu trabalhei muito para isso. Eu treinei muito e hoje eu estou aqui sendo campeã da Superliga. Honrando minha Conceição do Araguaia, minha Goiânia, as pessoas LGBTQ+, as pessoas trans, honrando todos vocês. Hoje eu estou representando vocês. Tem trans campeã da Superliga, sim.
Tiffany is one of my favorite athletes. And I love it when my favorite athletes get the gold. Just understand the story that she's lived. 8 years ago, came from Europe, wanted to play pro volleyball in her native Brazil. Ran into all sorts of resistance and rancor from the league, from the teams, from other players, from the fans, even from her own government, thanks to Jair Bolsonaro. But this queen of the court kept her head high, walked on the floor, and stood on some business. Spikes, kills, scoring points, became one of the best offensive threats in the entire Superliga. When she was up for free agency a few years back, Osasco won what was a gaudy bidding war between most of the league for her services. That's how valuable she became on the court. And off the court, just ask Trident and Adidas. She became the face of their products in Brazil. Not too shabby. And the very fans who were booing her 8 years ago and said she didn't belong are singing her praises now. She became a fan favorite throughout Brazil. And last Friday night, she had her hands on that championship trophy. And she wasn't letting go. You know, I wouldn't blame her at age 40 to, after all the things she's been through and having this championship in hand, I wouldn't mind at all, or blame her at all, if she hung up the court shoes, took her husband's hand, and samba'd off into the sunset. She walks away a champion. Tiffany, congratulations and obrigada. Thank you. Thank you for your perseverance. Thank you for your excellence. Thank you for just being who you are. And thank you for the inspiration you've given so many of us, me included. When we come back, a special treat, a piece of my story, and how it was a piece of a larger story. Athlete is a Gender hits the shelves May 13th. We talked to the two special authors that put it together. Catherine Locke and Nicole Mellenby will join us. That and more to come. This is Transposition Sports.
Meow, yeah, 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 meow, yeah. Wait a minute, Kitty's gonna get it. 4 paws in when I'm standing on business. I'm the kitten, all the rhinos bitten. This show can handle all the kittens that I'm getting. I'm not a beginner, no, I'm a winner. Hurry up, Carly, go get me my dinner. If Carly can spit rhymes, so can I. I'm Kirby the Cat. We'll be back.
So maybe I'll start a little bit softer.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine.
Dad?
Before you say anything, I just want to apologize for what I said this morning. I've been doing a lot of thinking. If you want to change your name, if you want to wear a dress.
It's a skirt, Dad.
Skirt? I don't know the kind of support you need, but let's get you some for all this transgender stuff.
Wait. Are you serious? Dad, what is this?
Oh, this is me supporting you. This is me saying I love you. This is me not losing you.
I love you, Dad.
Love you. Holly.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
This year, I finally get to play tackle football. I get to wear a helmet and all the pads and everything. 2 weeks ago, I got a phone call from the coach. We were drafted like we were pros. My team is the Cardinals. Someday I want to be in the NFL. My dad says, you're maybe the littlest person out here, so you have to be the most aggressive. The bigger kids will run you over. I can't let that happen. Dad says, if you let them push you around, they'll think you're a girl. My name is Chipper Webb. I'm 10 years old, and I'm not scared of nothing.
I'm nervous like a little kid. Am I really doing this? It's 6:30 a.m. in January. It's dark and cold. I'm old. I'm trans. I haven't played full contact football since high school. I met this group at a festival last summer. One of their players said, "You look like you can play a little bit." I thought she was kidding. 2 months later, I'm at Reapers women's football practice thinking, will they accept me? My name is Carly Webb. I'm 51 years old. I'm excited, and I'm scared. And I was proud that the piece of the story that you just heard was a part of this awesome book. Athlete is a gender. This has been, in some ways, writing a part of it. I was very proud to be a part of it. I still can't believe that the editors allowed me to be a part of it, but I'm glad they did. And they're here with us on Transposition Sports tonight. Katie Locke, Nicole Mellenby first. Congratulations. Second, welcome to Transposition Sports. It's an honor to have you, and it was an honor to be a part of this.
Thank you so much. We're happy to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Now, right out of the gate, you both realize that you've just made potentially one of the most controversial sports books, maybe since Ball 4 right now. Um, what has it been like for the both of you to see the critical acclaim that the book's already gotten, and it hasn't even released yet, even in the climate that we're in right now?
Well, I know it's funny because I mean it was always going to be a bit of a controversial book, but when we had pitched and sold the book, it was a different time politically. We had a different president. We didn't really know where things were going, and of course we knew that it was always going to be somewhat controversial just by nature of the content. But yeah, so it kind of, we got worried a bit when things started changing, just because all of a sudden it became more important, and we just wanted it to get it into as many hands of these kids who need it as much as possible. And it started seeming like it was going to be more of an uphill battle to do that. But no, people are excited about the book, and I think that's huge.
What excited you both about taking this project on? This is something you've been working on for almost 3 years now.
Even longer than that. So Nicole and I edited This Is Our Rainbow, which was a fiction anthology for the same age group for readers like 10 to 12. And that came out in 2021. And pretty much as soon as we had turned the final draft of that in, we were like, okay, what's next? We want to keep working together. We really love working together. And we felt like we weren't done telling queer stories. And we bounced around a lot of different ideas. And then I was on a walk with my dad, and he mentioned something about actually AJ Sass's story, and This Is Our Rainbow. And it's about a gymnast. And my dad was like, that was so great to see, because I feel like a lot of queer kid lit is about like artistic kids and kids that are in theater and they're writing or they're drawing. We're not really seeing a lot of queer athletic kids. And he said, as a straight guy, my introduction to queer people when I was growing up was through sports. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I like pulled out my phone and immediately texted Nicole, because Nicole is a huge basketball fan, a huge WNBA fan. And I was like, what about sports? And Nicole is not always the fastest texter. I have to emphasize how fast this reply came back. And it was in all caps. And it came back like, yes, we have to do that. Oh my gosh, like right away. And it felt like it clicked right away. It felt much more natural than our other ideas. We knew what we wanted to do. We immediately started to pull things together, like, oh, we want that person. Oh, well, obviously we have to have AJ Sass again, because his story literally was the inspiration for starting this anthology. So yeah, it came together really organically, and it just felt like it had a lot of momentum behind it right away.
Nicole, you wrote in the book about the WNBA.
Yeah.
First, who's your team?
The New York Liberty.
Okay, all right. We're here because I'm a Liberty fan. I'm a Liberty fan literally since the league's first year. I've been a fan of the New York Liberty. And what does the visibility of seeing queer women out there getting after it on the biggest stage in the sport mean for you?
I mean, it changed a lot for me. I had always, been a fan of women's basketball, because I played basketball in school. But because there wasn't as much visibility of the WNBA in women's sports, it ebbs and flows. It wasn't something that stuck around for me as much as maybe I had wished it had. And then when I started getting back into it and just seeing all of these, women just being themselves and dressing like themselves, and, having girlfriends on other teams or married partners on the same team. And it kind of just blew everything wide open for me, because, you get to see different representation sometimes in the media on TV shows of different characters who end up being queer, but it was like a real people in the media in a different way for me. And it wasn't someone in a costume and makeup department dressing them a certain way. These are the people being themselves and looking like themselves, and being able to see that kind of helped me say, okay, well, how do I want to look? How do I want to present myself? And like, how can I be comfortable in my own skin the way that they are, and the way that they're showing me that I can also do that. So it's just really fun to be able to, the sport I loved and these athletes that I loved watching be really powerful on the court, just getting to have that representation off the court as well.
Quickly, favorite WNBA player is?
Courtney Vandersloot.
Good pick, good pick. Now, getting back to this great work that you've done, when you were brainstorming this, who were some of the names that you ended up getting in here that you said at the beginning, this person has to be here, or this person has to be here? Who were some of the people that you said had to be here and you were able to land them? And what was it like to know that you did get them to be a part of this?
I mean, you were like on that first list. So I was super excited when you said yes. Yeah, no, seriously, you were part of that first list.
You really were. You were one of Katie's first,
Yeah, I was super excited when you said yes. So, I mean, pretty much everybody we wanted, we got into this anthology, and we feel pretty lucky because that's the second anthology we've been able to do that with, where we just go out and we shoot our shot and we get people. Getting Adam in the anthology was so great. Skylar getting in the anthology was really great. And then going to kidlit authors and being like, hey, did you play a sport when you were a kid? Do you still play a sport? Do you want to talk about playing a sport? That was more challenging than you might expect, because I think the queer kids who turned into authors they don't have a lot of overlap with the queer kids who played sports when they were kids. So we learned a lot. We kept reaching out to people and they'd be like, no, I hate sports. And we were like, oh, well, we love sports. Do you know someone who loves sports? And that's how we got Eric Brown is one of my favorite authors, and he's also local to me. And Alex London was like, I think Eric played a sport when he was a kid. And I emailed Eric and was like, did you play a sport when you were a kid? And that was our pitch to our fellow authors. It was much less formal than we went out to our public figures like you and Adam, Skylar, and Karina. And sometimes people came through different people. Like Karina came through AJ Sass. So that was a suggestion that came from AJ. So that was really fantastic and pretty much got everybody we wanted. We were really excited. We thought it was really important to have really solid trans representation in this anthology. We wanted to be really mindful of that. Queer representation in sports is so important across the board, but it's particularly important right now to be talking about trans kids in sports, because they're the ones being targeted and they're the ones who are looking for a home in sports. So we were really mindful of making sure that we had trans and non-binary rep in sports, kind of across the board.
We also really wanted to have, it was interesting because we wanted to have a wide array of identities, but also of sports, different kind of sports, team sports, solo sports. And I think for me, we did the best we could, and I'm happy with how it turned out. But for me, the eye-opening part was when we were trying to get all the kidlit authors and hearing them be like, no, I hate sports because of the locker rooms, or I hate sports because it wasn't welcoming to me. And now to be able to have this anthology to maybe touch kids who might end up or might have ended up going that way, but now maybe we'll be able to find a home instead. So that also was a really interesting part of putting all the names together.
Yeah, and it really came out in some of the sports. Like we have one of the reviews pointed out that we're a little overrepresented in ice sports and water sports. And I was like, it's fascinating because those are locker rooms that I would not want to be in, because there's so conforming in so many ways, right? But those are also places where we saw teams, people really talked about the way that their team supported them, because it was like an individual sport, you're only in the pool with yourself or you're only on the ice with yourself, but the support system around these people was really supportive in ways that wasn't always reflected in other sports. So yeah, it was a really interesting experience. I think we learned a lot while doing it.
Now, one thing also, talking about diversity of sports, Katie, you wrote something on being an equestrian sport on a horse, and how you found a lot from that experience. That story spoke to me.
I'm so glad. Yeah. I always think it's a great fun fact. I'm really fun at parties. So my non-disaster fun fact that I like to talk about is how equestrian sports are all gender teams and everybody competes equally. And I think that for me, like in retrospect, I was like, oh, that was a place where I could figure myself out without having this gendered influence on my sport. Like nobody was like, oh, you can't do that because you are a girl. Nobody, you can't do that. That boy, only boys jump fences like that. Nobody ever said that because that's just not how the sport works. But it also allowed me to really think about my body and the way that I experience the world as a non-binary person in a totally different way, and really come to terms with my body in a way that benefits my sport and really, again, take away the gender from everything that I do.
For the both of you, because again, I encourage people to get this book because these stories are great. These stories need to be told. Again, you talked about Eric Brown's. I enjoyed his because I think a lot of Little League parents need to read that. But you also have the history in there. Billie Jean King, Carl Nassib. You have Cece Telfer wrote something for it. There's a section sidebar on Leah Thomas. You know that certain people are going to take shots at you. What's your thoughts on that? How do you plan on dealing with that?
I mean, I think for both Katie and I, and I'll let Katie speak a little more because they're going through things a little more in the spotlight than I am right now. But this is what we do. We write queer books for kids. So we are locked and loaded and kind of ready in a lot of ways. And I mean, you're never fully ready. But it's what we specifically do. I always tell, so I taught at an MFA that was all concentration. So not just kid lit, also fiction, nonfiction. And so I used to tell all the students that the biggest difference between kid lit and other genres of writing, I think, is that we are thinking about our audience way more than anyone else has to. So we're already thinking about that. We're already thinking about who we're writing for. And for us, writing for queer kids has always been a priority. So when it came to a book like this, it's just an extension of that for us. I think that now politically, we're probably a little more in the spotlight than we might have thought, especially with book bannings and sports all pulled, into one. But I think it's something that we are aware of going in, unfortunately, and something that maybe we're not prepared for, but at the same time, we are ready to fight for. Catherine, if you want to dive in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, everything Nicole said is right. This both of us have been pretty widely challenged and widely banned. Sometimes I find Nicole's titles on a list and send her a screenshot. And she's like, "That one? That's not even my gayest title." And I'm like, "I know, but they're really mad about that one." So yeah, we're both frequently on lists across the country. So it's not something that's new to us. And for all of the kidlit authors who are in the anthology, they've all been challenged and banned at this point. So nothing new to them either. So I think that this is something that we've kind of accepted comes with the job right now. I hope it won't always come with the job, but I think that it is part of the job right now. And we believe in the work that we do. We believe in this anthology. We believe in the right of child readers to read the books that will help them and to save their lives and make them feel like they have a place in this world. And so that's what we're fighting for. And that's why we're excited to release this book.
Coming to the exit questions now. First one of two. What can you tell me about a little kid named Chipper Webb, and why was it important that that little kid is in this book?
I can take that one. I think that Chipper Webb didn't know about how fantastic her life could be and how big the world could be. And that finding yourself doesn't mean giving up other parts of yourself, that you don't have to lose one community to gain another. And it's possible to live your fullest life with all of the things that make you you. And I think, I wish that this book had existed in 1981.
I definitely would agree with you, but no, a quick follow up to that. What about that particular story spoke to the both of you? Because you were telling me you really wanted me to be a part of that, and I'll admit I was a little bit afraid of writing it because I thought you guys were going to reject it. Seriously, I really believed that you would reject it.
Well, I think it's. I think it was important for us first and foremost before we even saw the piece, which we can talk way more on too. But before we even saw that, we thought it was important to have your voice here, just because of the work you do in sports, and as this person who talks about sports and in interviews and does all this really great work about sports, and queer sports and athletes in particular. And we both thought when Katie brought your name to the table, I was like, yes, this is exactly the sort of voice that we want represented in this book. So before we even saw the piece, we were like, this is a voice that deserves to be in this book.
And I think that you did. So we wanted your perspective because I feel like you have a bird's eye view, like an eagle's eye view of the landscape of what it's like for professional athletes, queer professional athletes right now, in a way that like Nicole and I get glimpses, but it's through media, it's through journalists like you, right? So we wanted somebody who could really see everything. And I thought you did a really good job of taking your story and showing us that entire landscape, but through your story. And I think, it took us a while to get there. We had to wrangle this big story. You had so many thoughts and so much to say. But I think that we got there because I think that, you have seen a transformation in queer sports.
Good
that
word.
like Nicole, yeah. But like Nicole and I got to grow up like after the turning point, really. And so getting somebody who had seen the turning point, who had lived the turning point, and got to come back to sports. Like, I think that's like something that I always think about with your story. It was like that return to sports is so powerful. That is so powerful. I can't even really wrap my mind around how that must have felt, but I think that your story does a really good job of trying to explain that, of like, that this was like the final piece of finding yourself again without losing who you had become. And I think in doing that, you just have such a great perspective.
You have no idea. And I can tell you, I thank you both for letting me be a part of it, because a part of that healing that you're talking about was writing this, because it was the first time I really sat down and said, what did this journey mean to me in a very grand sense? There were times I was writing drafts and I was in tears. And that leads me to the exit question, because there's an email that you sent to all the contributors talking about all the different things. And there was a sentence in the email that really spoke to me. And it's not an easy time to be sending very queer books into the universe, but it's also the most important time to be sending those books into the universe. With that in mind, why do we need this book on library shelves and school shelves and bookstore shelves right now?
I mean, I think it's important for people, especially right now, to see that these, there's no harm in any of this, that that this is something that kids need and kids deserve, regardless of identities, regardless of anything. They deserve to have fun and feel safe. And I think it's important also for the kids who maybe are watching the news or seeing things about all of these different, people coming at them and trying to take that safe space away, to be able to give them something like, no, look, like, you belong here. Here's a bunch of other people who also belong here. And I think it's important too, and it was important to us, that we didn't lie to them at all either. We do have stories where it's tough. CC Telfer's is tough. It was, I think it's hopeful, and I think that was important too, to give them hope. It's important right now to give them hope, but it's also important to be as honest as possible. And I think that's why they need it now. And yes, Katie, if you'd like.
I think it's also important to show that what's happening in legislation and what's happening at school board meetings, what's happening at town council meetings, can't erase the progress we've made, and it can't erase the history. I think that there's this perception sometimes that like trans people are new. This is like a 21st century invention, or that that queer people in sports is that just happened because of the last 15 years, or they can blame it on certain presidents. That's not true. We've had queer people in sports since sports have begun. We've had trans people in the world and trans people playing sports since sports have existed, since communities have existed. And I think that that's part of what we want to get out there is with those historical profiles of famous athletes. We also are talking to the librarians and the teachers and the parents who are in these kids' lives saying, the big athletes that you grew up with, the ones that you remember from your childhood, they were queer and like you're okay. Everyone's still safe. Everyone still loves the sport that they played in. You still watch tennis. And Billie Jean King only made tennis a better sport and a more exciting sport by being a part of it. So I think that that's part of what we're trying to get out there right now. And I think it's really important right now. I want every kid to feel like they can play sports. I want the kids who have queer and trans like teammates to pick up this book and be like, oh yes, my experience of sport is not diminished by my friend Cassidy playing this sport with me. You know, like this is all, we're all in this together. And that's why it was really important for us to have like how to be a good ally in there as well, because we're talking to every kid who plays sports. And this is, I don't think we predicted the time we'd be releasing this book. I don't think we necessarily would have chosen this time as the ideal time to be releasing this book. But I do really believe what I wrote in that email. This is the most important time to be releasing the book. And it is so important that we reach every school and every library and every town that we can reach with this book. Kids in Iowa and kids in New York, and kids in California and kids in Washington, and kids in Texas and kids in Florida. Everybody deserves to read this book and to feel like they have a place in athletics.
Book is Athlete is a Gender. It drops on May 13th. You can pre-order it still. So get out there. Like I said last week, this is a good book. Buy it. Katie Locke, Nicole Mellenby, thank you for being on Transposition Sports, and even more so, thank you for giving me the honor to be a part of something so important and also so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For being a part of it.
Now, Athlete is a Gender hits the shelves May 13th, and I'm going to tell you, you want to buy this book, especially for the young sports fan in your life. For me, being a part of this effort was special. It was an honor to write something for this book, and I'm looking forward to people reading it and enjoying it. What's also been special for me is putting things together here at Transposition Sports and being part of the Transpositions news team. And if you like what you see, if you like what we do, hit up our Patreon, leave us some money so we can keep doing what we do and do it even better. And while you're at it, subscribe to my YouTube channel, HR Sports 1. In these tough times, news from our perspective is critical. And I love doing my part, and we welcome your support. For Transposition Sports, I'm Carly Chardonnay Webb.
All right. Let's bring the crew back
All
on
right.
to say goodnight. Wow, we've been the full 3 hours this time. Look at that. Kind of
Yeah,
figured we
wow.
would.
That was a marathon.
Yeah. A lot of coverage, a lot of stuff happening in the world. All right. Any final thoughts from the panel before we close this out?
Well, for all the stuff that's happening in the world, try to take it at your own pace and enjoy it step by step. I mean, you know, what else are you gonna do?
I don't know.
All right.
Keep asking questions. There's nothing wrong with asking questions, and a lot of the time, if you get to a point and someone doesn't want to give you an answer, then that's worth looking into. But don't stop asking questions.
No. All right. Well, we've been We've been the TransPositions. Thank you for tuning in. We will be back here next Thursday. Here every Thursday, at least some of us. But we welcome any kind of stories that you have to submit to us in our Discord server and in our we have a Blue Sky account, so you can send us like tag us and stuff there as well if you see things that you think we might be interested in. I think we're all on Blue Sky too, right? I am.
I
Erica?
don't. No, I didn't. I've never had Twitter. Don't have Blue Sky, so I've Instagram.
Instagram. There you
That's
go.
about it.
Ah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, let's close it out. It's time for that button again there, Steph.
Oh yeah, I get my one massively important function is to hit the button. So
Yeah, that's what Steph
I'm doing
brings
it.
to the table. She hits the button like no one else. Yeah, be kind. I'll see you guys over in the anchor locker. We can discuss.
Okie doke.